The story that I'm about to share with you took place a long time ago, a decade ago in fact. To be honest, I'm not entirely sure why I've decided to share it now, after so many years in silence, and I suppose it is something to do. What's a fact? That everybody I knew who could relate to what had happened is gone now, and I won't lie to you. A part of me fear is that I might be next. I don't expect you to believe me, though I suppose if anybody would believe it, it would be you guys. I decided to post it here because you accept people's experiences without judgment and because people need to know what had happened and was a community. So what happens is that I know the truth, and surely you will too. I suppose it would be helpful for you to know a little bit of back on formation. A little over 10 years ago I was a senior in high school and, like many teenagers, I was high off of the feeling of invincibility a driver's license and a car full of friends gave to me. It seems incredible to me that we could have been so incredibly naive. We were so full of ourselves back then. It's a wonder we ever even made it to that road. When I look back at all the stupid stunts that we had told her, well, you know what they say about hindsight. My buddies and I had a real Titanic group. A couple of us had been together since the 4th grade. That was me and Tyler. Tyler was a big guy, tall even when we were little, and bulky too, and although none of us were really jokes, Tyler played on the high school football team. The next two come along with Franco. He joined us in the 6th grade. Everything that Tyler was Franco wasn't, but he had a sense of humor. That's rival the most gifted stand-up comedians. I used to tell him that he should do stand-up and he would always make some self-deprecating joke and laugh it off. Jeremy and Corey came last in 9th grade. Those two were as different as day and night, but somehow their dynamic worked. One was tall and lanky and perhaps the most responsible of us all. The other was rough rocket, had a full beard at 14 and smoked and used to experiment with a tattoo gun of his own making it. And then there was me. I don't know how I fit into the group. Honestly, if pressed, I would say it was a sort of combination of the qualities of each of us which, now that I think about it and just about sums me up, a jack of all trades, a master of none. Anyway, the 5 of us were a real tight crew and despite the fact that we didn't all attend the same high school, it didn't stop us from doing just about everything together. I could tell you stories about his adventures in chasing girls, forming bands, facial hair contest and the wonders of the corn got paid. But that's not really the point. If you're at all familiar with the greater Delaware Valley or really anywhere in southeastern Pennsylvania, northern Delaware, or eastern Maryland, then you probably heard the tale of a Devil's Road. I know it sounds like some silly urban legend with a Trimble trouble name and just about the exact nature of this little stretch of roadway with everything from satanic cults, inbred do-pants, their rather famous and wealthy family in Delaware state history, and the KKK alternately making appearances in various versions of the legend. A couple of things most of the different versions agree upon include travelers being "please stop the road" by jeeps or pickup trucks with bright headlights, LB-shaped trees, and a general air of creepiness that permeates the side. Below is a link with a short overview of the general legend and its various incarnations. If you want to poke around on ready to YouTube, and there is some posts and videos that you can read and or watch to help run out your understanding of the legends of the area. A local radio station is also recently covered legend. I think I have successfully proven that this story isn't just some fabrication I made up out of sheer boredom. Stories of Devil's Road and They Called House have abounded for decades, long before I was even born. It's easier, of course, to write off such stories as ridiculous myth or misunderstandings, and while I will agree that some of the tales are clearly deficient, legends tend to have a nucleus of truth dilemma. In the case of Devil's Road, then, nucleus is not to be underestimated. One thing I would like to be very clear on is the exact location of Devil's Road. From time to time, and different names have been given as to the location of this bizarre place, Beaver Valley Road was once incorrectly given to me as the name of the entry road. This is again incorrect. The road's true name is at Cozart Road. It's not easy to find. Cozart Road is one of those blanking. You miss it? Type of locations. The turn is hidden away from the main road connecting Pennsylvania with Delaware, and there is no longer a street sign identifying the road at all. If you don't know the location already, chances are you won't be able to find it. However, is inside, been there more than once, I do know location. If, traveling northbound on Route 52, you want to make a right-hand turn immediately after passing the Fairfield Inn. Here's a satellite view of the area. As you can hopefully see, Beaver Valley is just due the southwest of our destination, so perhaps it's understandable why sometimes the names get mixed up. This entire area is a complex web of connecting winding back roads. I take travelers. What does Arthur mean? Path and away from civilization. If you're unfamiliar with the area and don't have a good GPS, it's very easy to get lost back here. And one thing is for sure, you don't want to get lost anywhere near this area. A word of caution. I know many of you enjoy seeking out and exploring places like this. Probably the thrill gives you a rush of adrenaline. Her right, I do understand. That's what drew us to the road a decade ago. Do not try to drive on Cozart Road. I'm not sharing this story to go. Do you want to go in there? I'm sharing it with you for my own reasons and to warn you to stay away. Nothing good can come from ignoring my warnings. Besides, no trespassing signs were posted all over the place. You'd be gambling with the law if you got content again you don't want to get. As an aside, the Johnson brothers, a notorious Pennsylvania criminal outfit active in the 1970s, murdered 3 teenage boys and buried their bodies on Cozart Road. Those remains, as far as I'm aware, I have never been found. The first time I traveled the road was a summer afternoon in 2008 with Franco and Tyler. We were so excited to ingredients in urban legend for ourselves that our eagerness outweighed our sins. After all, not much excitement usually happens in our neck of the woods, and I guess I can't blame us for wanting a little bit of action. And so we have to. My car, my old 1998 Hyundai Elantra, and made the drive in broad daylight. That first trip was uneventful. Nothing of note happened on that first play other than the fact that we missed our turn like 3 times, and that was before they removed the side. Except for one thing each of us seized on immediately, and the play set in eerie feel almost as soon as we began to crawl along its path. You might dismiss. That is just our imagination. After all, we were kids hopped up on urban legend. Let me elaborate. Route 52, the main road you turn off of to get to Cozart Road, is a busy thoroughfare. You can hear the traffic go by when you make the turner. Once you're on the road proper, though, the noise from Route 52 traffic is simply ceased to exist. It was as if we had driven into a vacuum, or outside contamination wasn't welcome. Like I said before, it was a summer day and we had all windows of the world for maximum effect on the road, and we heard that not one sound, not one. I still remember Franco's and nervous clip, like it was yesterday. Cheese, who died here as we traveled too slowly down. The road is actually a 2-way street, but it's physically impossible, for if you do ever happen upon another vehicle moving in the opposite direction, one of you is going to have to back up a long way down a narrow, winding road. By yet another reason, I do not recommend it trying to find this road. Another strange thing that we had noticed were the trees. The legends had mentioned something about the oddly shaped tray. Not a single one of them looked like any tree that I had ever seen. The trunks were bending contorted backwards away from the roadway. You know how trees usually just go straight up? Well, imagine an endless line of trees on either side of the road, contorted crook of the backwards, and even though it sounds crazy, I couldn't help but feel that even nature itself wanted nothing to do with this roadway. Mention the unusual silence already that continued as well, and remember this was midday on a bright summer afternoon, with all the car windows rolled down. You would think we would have heard of birds and squirrels, anything chirping or sleeping in this heavily wooded area, but the only sound that we were granted was the sound of our tires as we pressed on through the silence, and that was all that had happened during our first trip. Will you agree that the trees looked weird? Out of the abnormal silence was a bit unnerving, but as far as introductions go, it was a bit disappointing, and we didn't see any of these so-called skull trees, and we didn't see any sign of the called house, and nobody chased us off the road. However, we agreed that we would go back with the whole gang later at night for a maximum factor. After bringing Corey and Jeremy up to speed on the legend and experience, taken the road for the first time, everybody was excited to try a nighttime ride. This time we all packed up in a Jeremy Jeep and prepared ourselves for a late night adventurous. An added twist, this time we were just going to drive down Cozart Road. We are going to get out and walk. At this point I feel I should go into a bit more detail surrounding some of the more gruesome legends about. Specifically, if you have not yet looked into the links that I provided earlier, the DuPont family. Patriarch was Pierre Samuel de DuPont and Danny Morris. 1739 to 1817 he immigrated to America from France during the French Revolution. His descendants I found some of the most enduring and successful businesses in the Delaware Valley, and by the late 19th century they were among the wealthiest, is in the United States. Patriarch helped Thomas Jefferson and navigate to the Louisiana Purchase, and generations later the DuPont family designed the first secret atomic plants during the World War II. The Delaware Valley is littered with institutions bearing the DuPont name, with everything from chemical companies, museums, schools, and children's hospitals, and bearing the DuPont name and fingerprints. Rumor Chandler followed the DuPonts from almost the very beginning up to one including incest, sorcery, and murder. Patriarch Pierre was found of advocating intermarriage between the DuPont cousins to ensure honesty of soul and purity of blood. That much is known for sure, and according to some sources, sometimes the practice extended to siblings even generations later. In the early 20th century the DuPont clan maintained the practice of family marriage, despite the rising tendency towards abnormalities in the offspring and the family weakness for tuberculosis in the springs. Me back to the story surrounding Cozart Road. Local legend says that the cult house, which sits high top of a hill overlooking the abnormal roadway, once belonged to the DuPont family. The skull trees refer to locations along the road, but beneath the hilltop Manchester. What's the family bury their form, children, or, as some versions of the story say, offer the living children as sacrifices to what is anyone's guess. I don't know what I believe about the DuPont and their involvement in this whole thing at the end of the day, and I can only tell you what I saw and what happened to me directly. I can also tell you that this entire area along the Brandywine River is old. I'm old is European. Settlement in this area dates back some 400 years, and the indigenous people of the land lived here many centuries before that. Tribes native to the area include the name whose name translates to pure original people. In colonial times, native tribes for the North and modern-day New England likewise refer to the inhabitants of the Delaware Valley as the original people. All of this is information I have learned since. Well, I'm getting to that. Nightfall eventually came, and with it the boundless type of 5 teenage boys ready for a scary adventure. None of us really expected much, especially after the first trip earlier in the day had been somewhat anticlimactic at best. We were hoping to maybe get chased by some rednecks in a pickup truck. It would be a cool story to tell the ladies. Around 10:30 p.m. we all loaded into Jeremy Jeep and made our way to the road with the goal of reaching it by 11 p.m. We made pretty good time, and I'm already served as well as far as finding the entry points. Once again, traffic noises are simply cut out once we had turned onto the road proper. No sound, not even the chirping of crickets gave life to the human. Some rare as we reach forget about 5 minutes into our crawling drive. Jeremy, stop the Jeep so we can get out and explore. It was the deadest quiet that I have ever heard. Hey, come check this out, Tyler said quickly. We followed him up an embankment so he was nearly next to a hollow tree trunk. I didn't get a picture of her back then. I didn't notice my phone in 2008, but I did a little digging in and I have photo of the exactly Tyler pointed out. As you can see, the hollow part of the tree has been cemented in now. I'm sure there are plenty of reasons why someone might feel a little tree halo with cement and bracket. I'm sure that's not a lonely, isolated road that is about as convenient to navigate to the US tax code. It makes total sense to fill in a random tree with somebody. But what's the life of me? I can't think of any. Cozart Road is a quiet in the extreme sense back road in rural Pennsylvania that does not get a lot of traffic volume. What purpose does the semester of? What is it hiding? Hey guys, look up. Jeremy's voice sounded strange, almost as if you couldn't quite believe what he was saying. I looked to see. It was very easy to look up at the house and feel a sense of uneasiness. That might have made the whole trip worth it from this vantage point. With all that orange lights in the crosses in the windows, it looked like a genuine haunted house. What made me even more uneasy was that it hadn't been there 10 seconds earlier. And now you could argue, I suppose, that the house had been there all along and then whoever was inside just hadn't turned on the lights yet at 11 p.m. I had a hard time believing that, but you could argue that point. But I had already been there hours earlier and broad daylight. 3 of us had and none of us had noticed a great big man or house with crosses in the windows. Leave me over top of us. When the sun was out. You would think something like that would be difficult to miss it? We did not once, but twice. Call me crazy, but I don't think that house was there until it wasn't a coincidence that the street, which someone had gone to such efforts to conceal, stood at the base of the manor top hill. Thinking back to the stories I had read in preparation for the trap, perhaps there genuinely was something to hide, and that was when the baby cried. Did you hear that? What I wasn't imagining it for the first time since we had turned onto the road. There is sound coming from somewhere other than us, the unmistakable wails of a crying baby. Yet it was a muffled, as if it was coming from somewhere else. But it was no mistake. All 5 of us heard it closer to the Jeep to see if I could hear it better from there. But if anything, Luke's cries just grew fainter, still taking their cue. For me, the other is climbed down off the embankment. So we all piled back into the car, and you might think it's Carly for not investigating the sound further. What if there was an actual baby in distress? My guess is that whatever we heard was something beyond our help. The Jeep moved at a crawl as we craned our necks to look up to the house on the hilltop, and there didn't seem to be any driveways or access roads. So it was a bit of a mystery as to how anybody actually got up the hill to get into the house. We would have kept looking up for who knows how long had it not been for the ungodly thought of that rip through the air, making our Jeep rattling shake like a 10 bucks on wheels. The sound was by far the loudest and most earthquake in rumble I ever heard. It sounded like a freight train was rolling through the air above us. The look we all shared with one another as we tried to figure out the source of the ungodly noise and the grind from before was one of confusion and fear, and we had come here to be freaked out and entertained. The road was paying us, and fear at someone's urging. I forgot who it was. Jeremy, kicked, are you being a drive away a little faster than before? The rumbling it stopped as suddenly as it would be gone, leaving the night deathly still and quiet once more. We nearly crashed when Jeremy slapped his feet on the brakes as something came out from the tree line on her left and into the middle of the road, a goat still there looking at us. It was pale, white, and would have stood out in the darkness even without her headlights shining on him. He had no. I've never been frightened by a farm animal before, but I didn't like that thing one bit and I felt like it didn't care for us either. We sat there in silence by teenage boys staring at a time, at creeps for the night, and then it bleated at us. It was the worst song that I never heard in my life. It deleted the sound of a crying baby. I sat there, transfixed as this creature the wails that we had heard earlier while investigating the field of tree and blade continuously each new soundtrack of its agony than the one that came before that, are praying with the plaintive whine of frightened babies so loudly that we actually covered them with our hands. Franco buried his head in his arms and shut it in his corner in the back seat. When it was over last and the girl gave us one last piercings there, I could have sworn that it smiled without warning and it took off of the hill and the direction of the... None of us said anything for a long while. We who's out there burning gas for a minute, Jeremy, foot never leaving the brakes. I was the first one to snap out of our collective stupor, and when I did, I was in for a surprise. Jeremy, I asked quietly, is your clock right? He nodded. Why, it says 3:30 in the morning. I think you must realize that everything I've described so far I did not take 4.5 hours to transpire, yet according to his clock, it had been 4.5 hours since we had turned onto cuz. I wrote at 11 p.m. we checked our phones, only to be greeted with another surprise. Each of our phones had a different time. Jeremy's phone max, the time of his Jeep. Corey's read 115. Tyler said 236. Franco's 319, only mine. Reddit. Anything like what the real time actually was, 12:04 a.m. I have long thought about that little point in. I think I finally understand what I meant. If I'm right, perhaps it's a good thing I'm sharing my story now, utterly unnerved and more than a little terrified, when we sat in silence as Jeremy rode. A hardtail was being closely followed by a caravan of dark SUV-type vehicles with their high beams switched on. I don't know where they could have come from. There is nothing on either side of the road but what? There was nowhere for the SUVs to come from, and they certainly hadn't been behind us, moving at high speed with high beams blazing. And we screamed to Jeremy to move faster, and he frantically played with the clutch to get the G moving as quickly as possible. The caravan was gaining on us rapidly. The Jeep was filled with sounds of frantic yelling, swearing, and the general cacophony of chaos. We had come to play on Devil's Road, but the road had turned out to play with us. Eventually we did arrive at the end of the road, hanging a hard right time to Creek Road. The caravan stopped short after we made our turn, not bothering to follow us anymore for reasons I've never fully understood. Jeremy stopped the Jeep as well, with the caravan still there. We just looked back behind us at the last few hundred, illuminated under the bright lights of the high beams, into pound, go to merge from the hill on the right. It's the bathed in the light of the caravan, and once more, it didn't tell me ahead of us, it did not blank, it did not chew, and when it opened its mouth we heard the unmistakable screams of a woman, and she raggedy, and the paintworks shows. No, no, please no. A baby cried as we drove away, leaving Cozart Road behind us. As I said, over a decade has passed since I had spent on the road. Franco and I tried to talk about it a few times, to make sense of it, and we never could, and the others would have never speak of it again. After high school we went our separate ways. It's amazing how many years of friendship can so easily vanish. Some might say that it was always down to happen once we did another glue of high school keeping us together. I don't exactly agree. We did not go to the same school. To begin with, we had always dealt with that separation rather well. It's frankly astounding to me how it all fell apart, and just a few months after graduation. If I'm honest with you, I blame code for some part of it. Maybe that's stupid, but I can't help but feel that it stole something from us that night. No sounds, those images that we couldn't explain. I wondered what would happen of us if we had never gone there at all. Corey died at 22 years old. Tyler Childers not long afterwards. For a while Franco, Jeremy, and I tried to rekindle whatever. We and Jeremy are pillar of responsibility. I had experienced a personality downturn of bipolar proportions. He knocked up a girl, ran off and shut himself off from the world, and they found his car a year ago and the brand new One River. His body is still strapped into his seat belt. Play the end of Franco. Not long before Jeremy crashed, Franco took up a job as a landscaper. He said it paid well. In fact, he had seemed happier than I had seen him in years. It was like seeing a glimpse of the old Franco. He used to make me laugh so much. They found him hanging from a contorted tree on Cozart Road last summer. Now that each of them in the past, I now believe I understand the meaning of our clocks that night on the road. Only one clock kept the right time. Only one person has lived long enough to have a reasonably happy life. Only one person has kept going long enough to tell you what had happened and hopefully to convince you to leave well enough alone, because nothing good can come from chasing after legends. Recently I decided to do the unthinkable. The roadside had been taken down, but I would never forget this place. I wasn't foolish enough to go to a doctor this time. I decided to go alone and brought daylight. I would be dragging no one along with me this time. The road sign isn't the only thing that has been removed from my research and participation, and online forums increased police presence in recent years. They say it's because residents of the quiet and peaceful street have complained about unruly adventure seekers disturbing the peace. I don't really believe that's really it, but that probably does play a minor role. The cemetery has been cut down and this is what it looks like now. If the police sought to end the mystery of this place by cutting down the tree, they were sadly mistaken. The mystery endured his. The mansion on the hilltop was nowhere to be seen, something I expected in the broad daylight. Whatever makes its about here is a being of night and shadow. I'm certain of it. Now I don't know what involvement of any the DuPont have ever had in the mystery of Cozart Road. It's possibly they were only bigger and more serial themselves. But then again, maybe those rumors have followed them all these centuries for a reason. Maybe they do have a role to play. Then again, maybe the family DuPont, who cast so long a shadow in my local history and I did American history in general, I'm really pawns and something larger. Maybe it was a coincidence that the Johnson brothers killed those kids and buried them here and not somewhere else. Maybe it's a coincidence that the last known locations of each of my friends was either on this road, a very close by, before their bodies were found. But I doubt that. One thing my research has taught me, this place is older than in the United States, older than Pierre Samuel DuPont, older even than the pure original people who once roamed this land. Whatever is here, it was here before us and it will be here after us, and that's especially true if you think you would like to play with Devil's Road. The road is not a toy to be explored for your amusement, and we learned that to our sorrow. A pity that I'm the only one left to maybe understands it really. I drive near Cozart Road every day on my way to work. I haven't used to take Creek Road, add roadway that connects to Cozart, and then we turn down to in our haze. All those years ago to escape a convoy of SUVs and a pale gold. You better believe I was thrilled when I found a slightly faster way to work that didn't involve getting so close to Cozart. When I returned last fall, I didn't linger on that road long. I didn't even leave my car to take pictures of the tree stump. I drove along quietly, much more respect than my 17-year-old self ever would have. This time there is no high beam, Jays. There is no screaming woman. There is no crying baby. It was almost peaceful. The only thing that stood out came here, the end of the road, near the intersection with Great. In my rearview mirror I could have sworn I saw a pale head sticking out of the trees and the fan sound of Franco's laughter coming from in between the horns. My name is Joseph Cooper. I was a police officer in the town of Tennessee. If you're curious why the town doesn't show up at any Google search results, I'm going to tell you why. It wasn't an ordinary day at the station. I was doing my usual rounds of paperwork before heading home. Susan, one of the 911 operators, informed me about a call from a man named Marshall, the reason being an attempted child abduction. "All right, I'll take care of it," I said. "Get Play Cruiser." There was a 5-minute drive to get to his house. 2 other officers were already there. The straw man was speaking to them about the incident. I walked up to him to ask him about what had happened. He told me that a man had emerged from the bushes when his 7-year-old daughter and Josie Flynn was playing on her swing set. The description of the subject was that of a fairly tall, in his mid-20s with a short, well-capped brown hair and blue eyes. His outfit consisted of black and white shoes, blue jeans, a brown, a long-sleeve shirt and a gray mask that covered his mouth, and, strangely, only his mouth. When the man tried to do something to his daughter, he quickly stormed outside after seeing the angered father. The man quickly sprinted back into the woods. He took his daughter into the house and called the police, which led to the current moment. Marshall noted the man had a mob of razor, sharp triangular teeth and no lips, and that last part sent a chill on my spine. My colleagues on the scene thought that he was on something, but that look at his face convinced me that he wasn't lying. The next couple of days, several women disappeared and 2 bodies were found to Malden, partially eaten in the forest. The sheriff feared that a bear had a game to taste of human flesh and was haunting the townsfolk. I objected to that, since the injuries on the autopsy reports definitely warrant from a bear. Of course they ignored me and the deaths were reported as animal attacks. The following Saturday I was enjoying one of the few days off I had. While my wife Chloe was at work, I was lounging on my easy chair watching the movie The Revenant, drinking a beer to temporarily forget about the recent murders. My daughter, Sarah, who was 16 at the time, arrived home from her gymnastics practice. She gave me a big hug, as usual when she got home and when she walked upstairs to change out of her clothes. I watched my fridge to get another Miller Lite. I suddenly heard the ear-piercing scream of Sarah from my bedroom. I rushed up the stairs and into her room, practically ramming the door down. "What's wrong?" I asked in an urgent tell him. There was a man outside. He was watching me change. Sarah said, "Did you see what he looked like?" I asked, "Not really, but he had brown hair and a gray face mask on his mouth." Sarah said, my heart saying to my chest when she said that it was for sure the same man from the previous case. "Stay here," I said, going to my bedroom, I truly retrieved the Remington shotgun from my closet. I went onto the backyard pumping the shot and as I yelled for whoever it was to come out. "What's with their hands up?" There is no response. I searched the entire yard for 3 minutes to no one inside. Although I know Sarah would never lie about something like that, I went back into the house to comfort her until their mother returned. Now that the same man from the Marshall Flynn case paid me a visit, I was fully convinced that he was responsible for the killings and, sure enough, the following Tuesday, the remains of a missing young boy, Jared Hancock, age 10, were found in the forest preserve. His lower torso was completely missing. The smell of decaying flesh hung in a hot air. Even the homicide detective, Joshua Rogers, vomited his lunch upon seeing the poor boy. "You got a clue of what the hell did this?" I said. "Be honest, I have no idea myself. Whatever did this definitely was an animal, a person. Chopping this boy in half is in a far stretch, but there's no way they would bother with us such a precise card." Joshua said, "So what the hell does that mean?" I said that whatever we're dealing with is something supernatural. "I'm sure of it, Joshua, even though there is no way in hell we would have been able to convince the superintendent or the sheriff." Diane Joshua left the crime scene to execute the grim task of informing the Hancocks of their son's death. They predictably sobbed uncontrollably, Miss Hancock, especially after they calmed him down. Joshua asked them questions regarding their son's disappearance in the bathroom. They said Jared will spend the night at a friend's house. When they were playing in the backyard was when he went missing. Before we left with us to find the monster that had brutalized her son. We promised to do whatever we could to find them. When we left, I was walking by sheriff's office. "Go away. I don't know how to say this, but I came down here to tell you something from the superintendent. You've been relieved of your service." Michael said, "You're saying I've been fired after the 10 years I've been here?" And I said, angered by the fact that I've lost my job so suddenly and without any rational explanation, and calmed down. I had no hand. Michael said, "All right, how about you go and tell the superintendent to kiss my ass?" I said, throwing my badge on the ground as I walked off. After I got home, I opened the Jack Daniel's bottle I bought and I poured myself a glass. "I don't understand. Why did they just fire you?" Chloe asked. "I'm as much in the dark as you are, but I think I have a good suspicion. It's because of this mystery man that we're trying to track down. I must have known too much of what they're trying to cover up," I said. But despite losing my job, my promise to Miss Hancock was still there. Job or no job, I would hunt down whoever or whatever it was that was killing these people. "Well, I know what will make you feel better, Chloe. Take me for a second to figure out the application." Since there was visiting a friend, I figured why not, and I won't go into too much detail for obvious reasons. We were about to get into things when I heard a knock at the door. I immediately stopped what I was doing to walk towards. "Is that Sarah?" Chloe asked someone frightened. "Champion, whatever happens, stay right behind me, okay?" I said to Chloe, grabbing my hunting knife from a hidden compartment to my nightstand. When I slowly opened the door, it was Joshua, surprisingly, and civilian clothing. "It's just me," Joshua said after seeing me with the knife. "Oh sorry, I thought you were the thing," I said, embarrassed. While my wife was putting her shirt back on, I shaved the knife and I hooked it on my belt holder. "Was I interrupting something?" Joshua said, hiding a little smile. "Oh no, not at all, please come on in." And I said, as I shut the door after he walked in, "You want a coffee?" and asked Chloe. Sure, thanks, Miss Cooper. Joshua said, as he sat on the sofa. I sat across on my easy chair. Wellman, you won't believe this. They fired me the day after you. Joshua said that you too. This is it. They know something that we don't, I said. Is Chloe Gibbs Joshua's coffee? That's what I was thinking. The way I see it, we are going to have to hunt down this thing ourselves, and I know just the guy who can help us out, Joshua Sata. Who? I asked. Old man Perkins. Joshua replied, you mean that Vietnam veteran Rodney Perkins? And I said, word around town is that he's a bit naughty but still pretty dependable. He told me yesterday that he thought he saw our suspect by creek near the forest preserve and said that he would come along with us. Joshua said he saw it. I asked, apparently so. Joshua said, well, every second wasted here is another person dead, so we should head out now. And I said, after I packed my gear, I kissed my wife goodbye, as I in Joshua's house. It took a good hour to get there, and what house was surprisingly clean and looked at. We nodded. And we were welcomed by Ronnie, who shook her hands and welcomed us in as he went to get his duffel bag. He was quite good looking for an old man. He's 70 but he looks and moves like he's 50. We wasted no time as we left in our vehicles. He drilled behind us in his red pickup truck as we drove to the preserve, which was closed. When we parted, Rodney got out his M14 rifle out of the back of his pickup truck. I had my Remington shotgun and Joshua had his favorite Glock pistol. All right boys, and head home. Rodney said he's here. Said then done, Joshua said. As we ventured into the forest, we continued to walk until we finally got to the creek, which we strongly assumed it was one of the missing women. Jesus Christ, I said. I try not to look at that. There's a paper and its chest cavity, Joshua. Despite it being in the water for a God knows how long, the paper was still dry. The text, written in blood, said, getting warmer, the fact that this thing could write a note. That meant it was definitely a lot smarter than a mere animal. As we walked into the sewage tunnels, Joshua turned on his high-powered flashlights down there the raw. 10 minutes later we found a natural light source coming from another tunnel. We walked out there to see. We were now in a deeper part of the forest. We all shook ourselves when we saw the suspect, who was no longer wearing his face mask, revealing a lipless mouth with teeth resembling that of an anglerfish. This confirmed that this thing was definitely not Santa or anything that could possibly be natural. Somehow, Josh, I still have the balls to tell him to put his hands up, which only made the beast laugh. Oh, not to worry you, but I only summoned you all here to talk, said the creature, who was obviously lying, but his voice was surprisingly soothing and calm for being quite deep. If that's so, tell us what is your name is? Rodney said. He paused for a second, seeming surprised, as if it was the first time that somebody asked his name. I have many names. I had no idea what the hell that. I knew that it was Arabic. Now that that's out of the way. Why are you DNR logos? Joshua asked. I saw him crunching his fist, barely continuing his rage towards this unearthly thing. It's nothing personal, it's just. The taste of your flesh is so satisfying. It's like what you humans call pigs. It's the best I've had since I crashed on this planet. His choice of words crashed. What do you mean by that? I asked. Well, I guess I have no reason to hide anything. And now, so I'll tell you. 7 million years ago, I had crashed in an asteroid on this planet when humans were just starting to appear. I hibernated until the first civilization started popping up on Earth. I eventually woke up and started feasting on including humans around 3100 BC, before hibernating again around at 226, eventually settled down in the land mass that would eventually become this little town. After waking up again in 1837, I would see that on the locals here before I hibernated again. And now here I am. Strangely, not even can I fully know my own origin. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. This thing was a damn alien, old as humanity itself or probably older. Rodney's mouth was dropped the whole time by once. We were hearing. So then, why did you kill the little boy? Huh? Why him? I yelled that I have no obligation. An enraged Josh probably shot him in the chest with his pistol. What has the screamed in pain is purple blood and ooze from his wound, sizzling like acid. When it dropped to the ground, black horns. Then I started to grow from his head. His mouth opened wider as he sprinted in an inhuman speed towards Rowdy. Clearly pissed off, he tackled right into the ground trying to bite his neck with his large jaws. Did I fired my shotgun at it in Nevada and attempt to get it off? Josh tried to pull him off, only to be smacked the ground with his hands, which now had elongated, sharpened claws. After one more shotgun blast to its back, it finally got off of Rodney. He dropped to the ground and I'm angled mass from my shotgun blast. Did you get them right now? I think so, I said. Suddenly his hair began to fall off its head as its skin turned to light gray with the hint of purple, and then it suddenly turned into some frail and gargoyle-like thing. No, please spare me. Back to coughing up purple blood as it tries to up away. After all of those innocents you killed, you think you're entitled to mercy, Josh yelled. Has Rodney finished it with a headshot from his M14? As its body is strangely started to dissolve, a maggot-like creature burrows underground. I didn't know if it was bad or not, because all he cared about was getting the hell out of there before the police had arrived. To this day I still don't know how that thing went down so easy. I moved, even though I have Josh and Ronnie's number so we could always keep in touch. And if you guys are expecting more thrilling mystery stuff, and you must have been disappointed, he was getting a hell of a lot cockier and so he felt no need to hide anything anymore. 4 years later, and my daughter is not 20 and taking online college classes, I had to go to a rehab center to help me quit my excessive drinking from the unnatural horrors that I had witnessed. The only reason I'm still here to tell this story is because of my amazing wife and my child. If you want to speculate what the hell that thing was, that would be a great help too. I just hope to God that that monster is dead for good. I've heard a lot of stories from my grandfather. He was a detective for 27 years of his life, and I grew up listening to the tales of he and his fellow men as a child. He obviously amended the stories quite a bit to make them age appropriate, but as I grew up, more and more of the true stories came out. Starting about 2 years ago, my grandpa got sick. He's been on a slow decline ever since, and while it's been one of the hardest things I've ever had to deal with his illness, Adidas the catalyst for a set of stories he never before brought up. He said that he had kept them filed away deep in the folder he doesn't like to open. He calls them possible ones, but this last one, the one that he told me last night, he said it's the one that still keeps him up some nights, the one that he thinks about every day. He said he looked over the case files more times and he can remember, done a full re-examination of it all more times than he can remember, and it never makes any more sense. He says you told me now, because he can feel his bones, that he doesn't have a lot of time left. I recorded him and telling me the story. So what follows is my transcription of the case verbatim. I've only excluded his coffee and then he off-topic remarks made during the telling of the case. The case was a murder, kidnapping, At least that's what it looked like. There was Benjamin the husband, Jennifer the wife, and Katie their 6-year-old daughter. One of their neighbors had gone out for the paper around 6 a.m. and saw the Nepals' front door wide open. When she went over to see if everything was okay, she saw the wife's body. The neighbor called a 911 and eventually we were sent over there. Now, when I say there is no outward signs of a struggle, I mean it. There is no sign whatsoever that anything had happened. Well, except for the dead body, but even her body. Yet there were no wounds, no marks of any kind. I'm getting ahead of myself, I don't wait. To the house and came over the radio that the husband and daughter were unaccounted for her. If you're thinking, the husband did it and we did too. Obviously problem was both the families. Cars were still on the garage, so we think they might have left on foot. Some officers, what time does the neighborhood? And no one had seen them, including 2 neighbors that's around their porches for hours, starting in the early morning. No one had heard any kind of commotion coming from their house either. I mentioned the wife's body. She didn't have a hair out of place. She was on her back in the kitchen. About a third of her upper body was under the table. We found out after the autopsy that, well, she had just died. There is no cause that they could find. She had been a perfectly healthy woman, didn't smoke, didn't drink, ate right, exercise. It was like she just blinked her eyes and gone from alive. Today. Anyways, we searched the house. We went start with a fine-tooth comb, basement to attic, found nothing, no evidence of a struggle, no weapon, nothing. And so we left. We had spent hours in the house. I thought maybe we should come back in a day or 2 with some fresh eyes. We went over to where Benjamin watered. He was a supervisor at a lumber yard. According to his co-workers, he had shown up at work that morning just before 5 a.m. When he got him, he worked on this narrow grate thing that he was building in his office, something he had told his co-workers was a project for his house. According to the other morning supervisor, he don't even know. It's about half of the thing. Around 6:15 he play. He was running to the bathroom and that was the last anybody saw him. They never saw him leave. While we were at the lumber yard, I realized that I left my notes at the house. We drove back over there and we got there while they were taking the wife's body away. As soon as we were walking, it was a few minutes before we had gotten back there. I'm not exaggerating when I say the smell was everywhere in the house, leading up to the attic. And now I told you before we had checked the attic. I checked it myself probably 5 times. First, can I post my head up? I saw something. I saw a piece of wood like a box, you know, a crate. It was shaped kind of like a rifle case, maybe 3 feet tall, 2 feet wide, maybe 6 inches deep, rectangular. It was standing straight up and there was a blood leaking from. Will you call the photographers and all the people in there? They all do the thing and finally him. They pull out all the nails and open the box out, falls the husband. Think about that. This guy was maybe 5 times 140 pounds and he was put in a 3 foot by 3 foot by 6 inch crate. His insides, all of his organs, they were flattened. They were just wet, squishy pieces of fabric, all my hosta. He was stopped in there like I don't know what, like he was just a rectangular blood, skin and parts. His skin had the discoloration of a body that had been dead for about 2 weeks, which obviously didn't make any sense since they had seen him good morning. He was also missing his eyeballs. We were standing there trying to rationalize the whole situation when something cuts everyone's ears at the same time, a little girl's voice calling out for help. What followed was a sequence of all the people in the attic and to the rest of the house and the people out in the line and all saying some variation of the phrase. It sounds like it's coming from over there, and the problem was every single person swore they had heard it to come in from a different direction. Me, that I heard it from right above me. No, kidding me. The first time I heard that little voice say help me, I looked straight up, right up to the rafters. Of course she wasn't there. It was just my brain's response to where perceived your voice was coming from. We had to listen to every one of these people tell us where they thought they heard her voice coming from. People swore up and down. They heard it coming from the kitchen cabinets, the bedroom closet, the refrigerator, the tank behind the toilet, for God's sake. People on the street said they had heard it from underneath cars, behind trees, on the sides of the houses, next to the nobles. Everyone heard her voice for about a minute and a half, 2 minutes tops, and then it just stopped. About 2 weeks after that day, the wife's sister had a funeral for Jennifer. Jennifer Play buried her and all that. The husband's remains were cremated not long after that and put on display in a different part of the cemetery. I don't remember exactly when it happened, but at some point over the few weeks after he was cremated, someone stole his iron. It was missing for about 6 months, and then one day we could find out a groundskeeper. I told you that his skin was discolored. Well, this skin was perfectly preserved. Inside the urn with his ashes there were 3 eyeballs. Only one of them was the husband's. It's been what? 22 years? I still hear that girl's voice calling out sometimes, and I don't mean my memory is play tricks on me. I asked Google, she's heard that the same 6-year-old voice. And then I remember it was May 12, 2007. I was going to pick up a pizza for us. I saw that girl. I saw Katie Noble. I don't mean I saw her growing up. I don't mean I saw little girl that looked like her when she was young. I mean I saw that fucking kid. She was standing outside the Walgreens at right by our old house, crying. I pulled over and I got out of the car and I started to walk up to her. I can't explain how I felt in that moment. I was nauseous. I was so afraid, terrified, more than I've ever been. She looked right at me and said in that same voice, "Help me please. I don't know what the hell happened, but you just disappeared." I never took my eyes off of her. She was just there. 1 second gone, the next. I thought, who's losing my mind? I was seriously worried about my mental health. But then, about an hour after I got back home, the phone rang. It was Olson. I hadn't talked to that son of a bitch in 5 years and he called me that night crying. He lived on the other side of the country. He killed himself the next day. There is never a good idea of these stories. I know if there was, they wouldn't be the impossible ones. I would have figured them out one way or the other, and I know I've told you some others. But that girl's voice still wakes me up in the middle of good night. Sometimes I hear it from downstairs, sometimes from the bathroom. Sometimes I'll be laying on my side facing away from your grandmother and it'll sound like you. It's coming from her mouth. We never found a trace of that girl, nothing. I told you what they do with those cases. The goddamn it. I'm sorry, let's. That's it. That's the worst one. Some of the other ones might sound worse to you, but that's the worst for me. Okay, he told me that he didn't want to talk about it anymore and said now that he told me he would never talk about it again. I was very young when this happened. I don't remember much. I surprised most of the memories from those minds. Now I won't bore you. I want to get this out. I know what will happen when I post this. They know who I am. They just never thought that I would speak. They were wrong. I'm just going to cut to the chase. April 23, 2008. I just turned 13 when my parents had died. The cop knocking on the door, my grandmother here in the news and shopping her eyes out. The crash, the fire. I lost it. I stood in my room. I'm open for hours. I couldn't handle the stress. I was a blank face for weeks. Nothing seemed to be enjoyable anymore. My grandmother got very worried. She took me to see a grief counselor a week later and I was diagnosed with depression. I want to buy my day as well as I could going to school with friends. It could have been if I wasn't forced to buy the counselor. How I hated her. As usual, I was walking home from counseling like every other Wednesday. I was tired and I just wanted to get home and sleep. I was not one for talking about emotions and I hated every session. I turned onto Harper Street when the black minivan rolled up next to me. It was a slow night to November and nobody was out on this quiet road. The minivan abruptly stopped next to me. Men in comfy clothes helped out. Hey, kid, stop. One in a hoodie said he had the hair down, uncovering his face and dark shadow my face. Them. What do you want? You're coming with us? He said flatly. No, screw off. I started walking again at a quicker pace and I heard the van started rolling after me and then I was slammed to the ground and I know what their intentions were. At first I did, but I would not expect what was to come. I thought the sack go over my head out and I screamed as they lifted me and tossed me into the van. I tried screaming out, but one of them sucked me in the face. I went out and I woke up to find myself still in the car, my hands tied. Everything was jet black under the sack. How long have I been out? I could hear the men in the car talking. My head rang and I couldn't make out everything, though the car made a sharp right. Then I rode against the door and I grounded. I don't know how long I was in that car. It could have been hours or just a minute. Time was irrelevant at that moment. After however long had passed, the car stopped. I heard the door slide open and click. I was picked up on my arms and dragged out. I could hear lots of chattering voices. I heard screaming and crying and then I was tossed into a small room. The sack was ripped off, but before I could get a look at the face of my captors, the door slammed shut. I was in a small room with padded walls and a small car with no sheets. What the hell? I looked at the tiny window of the door first thing. When I saw it shocked me. Other doors stretched down the hall this far as the eye could see you, at least that's what I could see my window. Other eyes start hatefully from the other windows. I looked at them in a trance. What are these people been through? Why us? I saw two men in black with helmets are walking down the halls, guns at their sides. I talked back down as I saw the others do the same. I heard in the corner as one of the guards looked through the tiny window. He sneered. I heard a commotion down the hall and irritated voice ring out. I heard fast-paced footsteps and running back towards me. The guard came back fumbling with his keys. He opened the door and he rolled his eyes. He had pale skin and a slight stubble. He grimaced out of me and he hoisted me up. He grabbed his back from a hook on his mouth. No, 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 no. I cried out as he put it over my head. I struggled and I managed to land a kick to his ribs. He let out a loud grunt and shoved me against the wall. Another guard rushed in. The second guy. I'd pay me to the wall as the first guy that put the sack over my head. What do you want from me, please? I screamed. They tossed me on some sort of cards. They didn't talk through the entire process, the cart man, multiple twists and turns, and then I was hoisted up again and I was carried into a separate room. They sent me down in a chair. I felt the cold seal wrap around my wrist. I went under the sack. The guards left the room and they slammed the door shut. Minutes later the sack was ripped off my head. I gasped in the fresh air. I looked up. Give me a middle-aged woman in a chair opposite of me. She wore a pantsuit and glasses. She looked at me calmly. Another guard stood on her left and staring me down. Grimly, did I do something wrong? I remembered she didn't say anything. Did I do anything wrong? I was cut off. Hello there, Peter. I assume you're very thirsty right now. Would you like a drink? Do you know why you're here? She asked. I shook my head again. Well, I can't be super specific, but I'll try to explain. So our government is trying to cure multiple rare diseases. You know that, right? I not at it. What would you hear is to try to cure those diseases. We have cured Ebola and even some minor forms of cancer. However, only some of these vaccines work. This research facility is where we test out these vaccines, she explained, by kidnapping children. The words came out before I could think. Her calm demeanor faltered. She looked at me with the steely eyes. I suppose I didn't look at her and I stared down as my dirty clothes. The guards broke up. Look up. The woman started speaking again. We're going to be testing a vaccine on you tomorrow morning. After some crap. You will go through a 3-step process. Part 1 is decontamination. You will be cleaned to thoroughly and will be. Do I have any bodily issues? Part 2 is preparation. You will be put into a special tubing and will be put in a chamber. To avoid spreading of disease through bodily fluids, you will have an airtight mask as well. Part 3 is injection. You will be briefed once you complete part 2. I didn't speak. This was absurd, do you understand? She asked. I'm not at it. Good, Lance, Corporal, you may take him back. She said to the guard. The guard grabbed me without saying a word and put yet another sack over my head. Hi, Grandma, says. I heard the door opener. I thought about my grandmother and my friends at school. What were they thinking? I've been gone for hours, but who knows how long. I thought about all of this until I was tossed into the cell. The cold concrete floor has scraping my arm. As I landed, I let out a soft cry in. The sack was pulled off my head, the door slammed shut and I just sat there. I must have sat there for hours thinking about what was happening to me and where I was and how I should have run faster. I didn't sleep very. I woke up to the sound of a door opening. It was a lot of Metallica and it came up with a crash. 2 guards came in, the 2 from the first time. The first guard put the sack over my head and I struggled as usual. However, the second guy took pity on me. Take it off and we'll take the safe route. The first guard replied, we were told to keep him blind. What do you want me to do? Hold his eyes shut for him. The sack was suddenly ripped off my head and the guard greeted me. I looked up at the guards. The first one was passed in. The second was equally pissed at the first guard. All right, kid, you're going to see some nasty stuff. It's not like you live to tell the first guard, said the second guy. Nudge them. And the first guard, stop. Even in the horror of the situation, I could feel the awkwardness. They called me up on my arms and set me on here waiting cart. It was like a golf cart, but with a large bed at the back and no roof. They drove down the hall, for it must have been half a mile. The little rooms that line the hall, inside of every room or hateful little eyes. I couldn't make out any faces. It was the situation, and if you could call out that the cards are probably stopped. Alright, you will need to wear the sack for this part. The second card said, and then the sack came over my eyes. We walked and walked and walked, and then the sack was ripped off. What is alone in a tile room? I looked around, a single dinky light bulbs at the center of the ceiling flickering lazily. A loud voice filled the room from hidden speakers. Hello, Peter, welcome to part 1. You will be completely clean so we can move on to step 2. It was the lady. I looked around. Then I crossed my arms. Peter. If you don't, there will be consequences, she said. I took off my clothes. Who knows what they would have done if I didn't take a very special shower with us, she explained. One of the tiles moved away and the shower head popped out. The water turned on instantly as I was a sweaty and dirty mess, and I accepted the shower and I scrubbed. Not having any soap wasn't an issue, I was just happy to be clean. After about 10 minutes the nozzle went back. I heard a loud thing, can patients have to wear at the hospital? Good job, now please put the gun on your first, closer to be disposed of, as you will no longer need them. What does she mean? I won't need them. The guard said that I wouldn't make it out. That's pretty clear. I don't know. I should have done the galaxy from the shower room inside. Play the trash, you waiting room, 2 other boys, my age, stats, and plastic chairs. We're in the same god as me. The guard shut the door as they tossed me in, and I looked at the 2 boys. Hello, one of them mermaid. Hi, I replied. I guess it wouldn't be alone. How long have you been in here? 3 days. He's been in here for months, always refused. I don't know what they did to him, but he's pretty static, is the word Sean's. So how did they get you? Yes, what do you mean? I looked at him. How did they, you know, get you? You mean kidnap me? Yeah, he rolled his eyes. They put a sack over my head and tossed me in the car. How about you saying? He replied. He looked down at his shoes. I took a seat at the chair. Crossman, a motel painting, hung on the wall above my head said. We all just kind of sat around for a while. Nothing really interesting happened, unless you count Sean moving his head for the first time in 15 minutes interesting. And then it was pretty boring. I didn't complain, though. It was nice to be another company, even if it was against my own. Well, I was starting to doze off when the door opened. We were all pulled up and put into a single file line. We walked on the hallways and were put into a room where 3 cylindrical pots at. I knew what these were. Hopefully it wouldn't be my coffin. Hello at Tarragona. Her voice was eerily cheerful. Ryan and I got into her pods, not wanting to know what would happen if we didn't. Sean just stood there, but not for long. A woman in a polo shirt and khakis rushed in and got him into his bottle, and he asked, what is Ebola or something even deadlier that we didn't know about? The lights in the room dimmed and 3 people in battle suits rushed in. A little hole opened up in the pot and Anita poked through. I cringed. Stay very still. A voice that I need to be very precise. I thought the needle break the skin and the plunger get pushed. I went. He pulled the needle out. You will receive the vaccine momentarily. Just to disclaimer, all these vaccines are still being tested. Some may have some side effects. Wait, what? I waited for a few moments when my skin started to itch. It worked fast. I kicked my foot against the glass and the man in the Bible and I vomited. The man quickly came over and how to switch in the pot. The vomit was sucked on a tube. And airflow soon resumed. Another biosweet person ran in with the case. She opened the case and pulled out a needle. The hole opened. "This will hurt a bit," she said. "Just stay calm and take some deep breaths." I screamed as the needle punctured the flesh. I cried and yelled for helping her to stop. She pulled out the needle after a minute. After a few minutes, the itching and vomiting it stopped. I laid back against the pot, but then I hear the screaming. I look over to see Sean getting injected with the vaccine. He struggled against his constraints and he screamed. The battle-suit woman couldn't get the needle, and then he seemed to be growing very rapidly. Hear the scream deepened and the glass broke, the constraints wrapped in. Sean leaped out of a pod and out of the woman. Another woman screamed in, a white girl in sound could be heard. 2 armed guards rushed as the other vials rushed out. What was one, Sean, was now this thing. He was hunched over in. His skin was bubbly and pale. I almost looking like putty. He turned to the guards and he screamed like a banshee. The guards opened fire with the rifles and Sean and nearly exploded from the bullets. The wounds ripped right through his flesh and went all over the walls. Blood splattered on his and Ryan's spots. More guards rushed in and started shooting. A heap on the ground, just a pile of mushroom, opened Ryan's pod and we carried down the hall roughly and to a chamber. The door slammed shut. Ryan and I are freaked the hell out. What the hell was that? You know, the old that I couldn't even speak. It was horrific. He. Ryan, stop speaking. What if that happens to us? I stopped breathing for a second and I looked over at holy shit. Moments later, biosweet people run in along with regards and they looked at our terrified faces. One says, "You did not get the same vaccine as Sean. You were fine. However, you will be tested and studied for the following weeks to see how the vaccines affect the human biome." And Sal rep, she was cut off by the sound of gunfire. The guards turn around and run down the hall, shoving me biohazard people inside. I don't know what I was thinking at that moment, but I like to ride in it. We got up and we ran like hell and alarms started ringing through the building. Guards ran past us and not even looking at us. What possibly could be going on? We turned down the volume and I thought of the ground. She looked down at us with a grin. "Nice, dry kiddos, but you don't get to leave. In fact, you are to be disposed of." My face went pale as the guards picked us up and ran us down the hall the other way. Ryan and I tried to fight back. We were brought through these 2 double doors and then into this giant circular room. In the middle sat a large round pit with bubbling fluids. Set alarm for 2 o'clock. It kind of looked like one of those things that dispense water continuously into a pool. The woman nodded at the pool of what I assumed was chemicals to the guards. The guards started carrying us right and I looked at each other and we shook her head. I don't know how this happened, but it was a miracle. The doors burst open and 2 men in combat uniforms shot the 4 guards down, deadly missing me and Ryan. What does? Pool of chemicals. Ryan and I did not see the aftermath, unfortunately for us. Exclamation point, samurai and you die. I struggled as she pulled my head closer. I cringed. She looked at me and laughed and then Ryan tackled her. Her head plunged into the fluid and she screamed. My eyes widened. Ryan quickly pulled back. I looked at the tube and I saw that lever. I got up and I pulled it, the fluid out. What was once the woman was now a burned to rash corpse. Her whole head was hanging on by the last few attendants. The Burlington boiling skin peeled. I leaned over and I vomited. Ryan looked at the corpse wide-eyed. Holy shit. I sat down and I leaned against the wall. I shut my eyes and then the doors down. Heads up, Federal Bureau of Investigation. You're being detained, said one of them. We were being rescued. Never had those words. I felt so good. I was returned home under a made-up story that I didn't kidnapped by a local predator completely made up. Lucky for me, I was safe and sound. Unfortunately, Ryan was sent to a mental hospital after he plunged the woman's head into. I still try to visit him every now and then, but I can't talk to him. All he does is rant about what he calls the Concord woman. Who knows what that means? It turns out, a private military contractor was hired by the three-letter agency to make weapons for torture, and we were there to test an anti-seroma. The base was an underground facility in the foothills of the Sierra Nevada mountains, just hours from where I live. I don't know if I'll ever be able to get over what I had seen, but I'll try my best. Just to forget one of those days. It was the same route that I had taken 100*4. I will leave my office, take the main road out of the industrial estate and then take a shortcut through a hatchet which led to a small housing estate, and then I would duck under the metal bars put up to stop cyclists riding past and then out into the countryside. I'd always enjoyed it. As soon as I hit the wilderness it was so quiet, and in the summer there was something plain majestic about walking past miles and miles of cornfields. When I got to the T-junction, my number was blocked by a car crash. 2 cars were upended and made peacefully in the rods along the side of the road like upturned ladybugs. A police cordon had blocked off entry light out. I have to turnstile and follow the public footpath along the side of one of the fields. From behind me I heard the screams of a woman. I can only assume that she was a part of the crash or knew people involved. I remembered wincing and paying of anxiety curlers in my stomach. I had never walked through the fields before her, but I roughly using the landmarks like the church people. That was only a few blocks from my house. I saw the forest and that abutted the hedgerow in front of me. I approached and I saw that there is no way through, and so I followed the footpath that led in the opposite direction to where I was headed. I continued to hear sounds of commotion from behind me, the screams now replaced with the sound of sirens. I hoped that meant an ambulance was taking away survivors. They don't use their sirens, otherwise halfway along I don't just a break in the heads up. So I pushed myself through and into the forest. A desire line from many years of use show me the way through a damn track trampled into the dirt where no undergrowth grew. The spaced trees got more and more dense, and less light broke through the evergreen canopy above the track, leaving me with 2 less and noticeable path. I took on my phone and I tried to Google Maps. Slightly disoriented from the dense forest, I chose the right path. It was hard going. Any speed I had was now replaced by careful footsteps as I lived in my legs over very rude and rocks. Try my best not to get my trousers dirty. My progress was stopped. A chain link fence came in. If you check in the map again, there didn't appear to be anything on the other side, and so I assumed it was a landowner's border 40 yards or so long, and I saw an opening. The thin metal wire had been pulled back like an incision. How to open, by a surgical class. I saw signs pinned to the fence at irregular intervals. No text, just a logo. What are? The black square with a white, solid circle in the middle. I took a moment to decide if I was going to risk it. Haven't heard rumors from when I was at school of farmers shooting intruders on sight. It was then that's. My phone rang. It was my wife. Hey, I said as I answered. Where are you? I'm on my way home. There's a car, so I needed to take a detour. It's 2 o'clock already. Shit, I said. remembering the promise that I made to her, I won't be long. I promise don't leave without me. You know what my mother's like. I can't guarantee that part of me was okay being late. I didn't get on with the animals that well. Those other part of me didn't want to disappoint my wife. I'll be quick. As I hung up, my body already made the decision for me, and I was under the hole in the fence before I had a chance to put my phone away and the forest. Soon then, and it wasn't a natural thing, I could see tree stump, stop the forest floor until it was almost a clarinet. And then the smell hit me, a sweet odor mixed with rats. My dad had a ball python when I was a teenager, and the sweetness reminded me of the smell of a newly defrosted my house. And the rat reminded me of the smell that would greet me when the snake rejected the food and I would have to remove it. In the morning, I expected to see a dead deer or something similar. When the source of the odor was revealed, I was not ready for it. I stumbled and I fell to the floor. I didn't see it, even in the winter sun. I hadn't noticed that I had been checking too far into the distance. When I pushed myself up on my arms, it stared back at me, two empty eye sockets, and did bonus smile that either side helped me or gave out a side of life. The skin on his face was bloated and pulled out like a shirt, bursting at the seams. The arms lay peacefully at its side along with its body and a Y incision buckling around the stitches. Frantically, the eye scuttled along the floor, and trying to get away from it, I stopped when I felt something coming to contact with my back. I jumped onto my feet with a loud scream. Looking, it was only a mound of impacted dirt. Like that I'll return my nest with a large hole in the center. I couldn't remember being so scared. The last time that I had seen a dead body was before my father's funeral, and his body had been in storage, so it didn't come with the rat and stents. That and now presented me. I stand around and noticed more and more of the bodies, all neatly tucked away, some shielded mostly from you by grass, others in the open as if they had only been recently placed. I felt my heart race in my chest. I had heard a body of arms before, but I know them to be rare. I didn't expect to stumble across one in my own backyard. In my adrenaline, so tight, I took on my phone and I began filming. I knew my friend Josh wouldn't believe me when I told him, so I wanted to. Trees with how come? I was walking around holding the phone out in front of me. It was reminiscent of when we both stayed at Chillingham Castle for the night. I was a nervous wreck, but with the night vision camera something changed to me. I guess that's how journalists cope. And Warzone. I watch further into the force of a better word. Farm to 12 bodies and total, all different states of decay. Next to them were a little white post with numbers on them. It was horrific. I didn't stare. Instead I followed the phone, making sure I had enough footage for Josh. In the distance I heard the lo-fi sounds of radio, maybe walkie-talkie. I didn't stop filming, I just ran back from where I came from, nice little under the brake directions. I waited until he asked me through. As I was walking along the line of cars that waited, I thought my phone vibrate. It was the text from my wife, "We are leaving without you," and I took a photo of my legs and shoes and I sent it back. "I had an accident," I replied. She rang me back. "What happened?" She said, "I can play sounds of traffic in the background, while the shortcut I took it didn't really work out." "You're telling me here, are you sure you didn't do that so you didn't have to spend time with my parents in the background?" My legs were heavy by the time I had to ride home. I don't run, so the little that I did I could feel. I showered and changed, secretly, glad that I had the afternoon for myself. The first thing I did after that was to send a video to Josh with a message of, "You won't believe what I just saw." I waited a couple of minutes for him to reply, knowing that he was probably at work himself. Want to reply, didn't. Comma. I put it up my laptop, opened an incognito browser window and body parts. It was 4 o'clock. Have you watched it back? He said that. I heard his voice become more and more breathless. Why, I'm coming over. He said, get that on your laptop. Are you running or something? I can pick you up with her parents. What's so interesting that I need to watch it again? That first body, he said. I could hear that he was running out at the end. At the end of the video it's gone. What? I said in front of my laptop, at the dining table, looking out of the front window waiting to see Josh come up the driveway. The video was ready for me to play, but I couldn't bring myself to watch. And what happened when you were there? Another part of me said moments later, he must have run a few miles. Answer the door. I wasn't sure if I was happy he had run so far for this. It filled me with read his face. Was that a pure right? I expected it to be red from exertion, but instead a ghostly powder greeted me. I had known Josh since we were kids. I stood by him when he became addicted to heroin. There were times when I didn't think you would pull through. He had turned his turn off around. It was an incredible change. There was something stayed with Emma and impulsivity, an addiction to risk. Have you watched that? He asked. Not yet. I was waiting for you. Fucking hell, man. Do it now. Can I get you a drink? Are you trying to stall? No reply, but I was. Play born. Press play. The first thing I noticed was my nasally breath that hollered the audio. Watching it again brought back that feeling of anxiety. My hands when it's cold and sweaty. Here it's coming up, he said it, sitting in the chair in front of it. He paused the video. Look, it's gone. He said, pointed to the patch of the ground. How can you be sure? If you rewind the video like he had already watched it 100 times, you see that's where the body is. You can see those 3 flowers there. Now watch you skip forward there. The 3 flowers, but nobody untangle, travel down my spine and cause me to shiver. He was right. I watched as Josh jumped backwards and forwards in the video. What the hell is that? He said. A pause in the footage of God. It was a freeze frame of me turning to point the phone in the direction that I heard the radio host. A long yellow tenderloin, the frame he moved forward, another frame and the tendril appeared to be wrapped around something large like a body. Yet the next frame, the camera was pointed towards the fence and on the left side of the screen, the lower half of what could be considered a bloody legs and feet. There, he said, pointed to this much, that could be anything. I said it's the same yellow thing. It picked up the body, I don't see it. I replied, not wanting to believe what it was. He moved it back a frame. How can you not see it? He pointed to the yellow. He proceeded, a heart between the 2 frames. In the morning that he did it, the more I saw the narrative that he was painting. We have to go back there. You know how to get there, right? I'm not going back, if that's what you think it is. That would be crazy. I'm getting myself a drink. Do you want anything? Josh didn't respond to. He was not watching an early part of the video. I didn't drink in daytime and I rarely drink. I poured myself a whiskey and I drank. It needs. What's that? He said from the other room. I poured myself another and I done that too. When I returned, the footage was paused. What do you think? That is at least a few feet tall. Wait a minute. You skip forward in the message to where the yellow tendril spanned the screen and edge back, and I saw it. I fell against that and I said holy shit. I found that on the screen, a blurry image burned into my eyes, what I thought was a turn. My nest was there, very blurred, and out of the hole was a blob of yellow. That's where it came from, Josh. I returned to the kitchen and picked up the whiskey bottle. It wasn't the rights of what had happened, it was the what. If I had been inches away from that thing when I fell, if I had stayed any longer, I could have ended up in there. My phone vibrated. I picked it up. Alcohol. It was a photo of my wife play with their parents, didn't even eating sandwiches at the garden center, and a message, really wished you were here. It was at the point that I wished that I had gotten home on time and I was there with her and not watching footage of a near-death experience with Josh, but I replied, I need to. Really I do. She sent back a frowny face emoji and said that they wouldn't be too much. I know what the numbers are. I heard Josh out from the dining room. What I said, returning the numbers on the signs, their distances. Look, this one says at 10 a.m., that one says at 2300, and the one he paused as you rewind the next to the body that disappeared and says, 5 a.m. the working out how far it reaches. I stayed at Josh and how you was able to deal with this as some sort of puzzle. Every extra piece of information scared me further, but to him he was getting more excited. My wife is going to be back soon. What are you saying? We need to wrap this up. I don't want her to know what happened. You're kidding. He set his face no longer. I'm serious, man. You need to show me how to get there. I opened my phone and I showed him on Google Maps, and that doesn't help. But I don't know this area. My wife's going to be back soon and then we better hurry. He said, standing up and anxious to the other. I'm not going back there. I don't need you to just show me where it is. I have never seen him like this before. The determination on his face scared me, and the traffic had cleared from earlier. All that remains of the accident was some police tape around the areas of where the two cars had crashed. On the ground is still a markers. The sun had set a while ago and has shown the torch out of the hedgerows looking for the turnstile over there. I pointed out, over here, don't go too far, I don't want to lose you. I said, trying to keep up. He relented, but I could see his excitement grow. We're next, he said when we stopped at the edge of the field. This way, I said. We hurried along the head drawing until I saw the break. What were you thinking? Coming this way, he said as we climbed through. I was trying to get home. I didn't expect to find. When I did, we moved through the forest. It felt all the more foreboding as the light had died and we turned right of the splits into the fence. The hole had been repaired, but badly. Is it over the other side of this fence? Shit. And they know I was here, that's fine. Just said I already twist in the middle to remove the repairs. I don't know we're here. Sorry, the freaking end call me, but he didn't care. He continued like Amanda Torment. In moments a new hole was revealing itself. I'm not going with you. You know that. That's fine, but I'm going. What if something happens to you? I'll share my position. What you do at dude, you know me more than anyone. I'm going in there, I don't care what happens to me. I can't. He put his hand on my shoulder. I need to. Please let me. If this is the last thing that I do, I will die happy, please. But it was already under the fence and walking away. I waited for a few minutes until on the tracks and back to the field, my phone buzzed. It was a photo from Josh, that of a body he had found. What the text? 23 millimeters, be careful. I replied, and I stared at my phone as I made the final stretch to the house and the phone vibrated again. "Where are you?" It was my wife. "2 sacks," I replied. In. Moments later I was back at the house. I agreed to my in-laws. My wife took me to one side. "Where were you?" "I was helping Josh," I said, and her face changed. "Josh," she fainted, injected into her arm and got her head back. "That Josh, yeah, I don't like it when you spend time with him. He's harmless, but he's also an old friend." She said, "You need to spend some time with my parents," and I said I would, and we did. I talked to her dad about football and tried to make conversation with her mom about her flower arranging it. I can't believe people have that as a hobby. Even she fell to keep rolling interest as she smoking. "Do you have any alcohol?" My father-in-law asked. "Yeah, I saw that," showing him into the kitchen, and he's fired the bottle of whiskey sitting on the sideboard. "I don't usually drink in the day, but today has been a bit of a trial, that I admitted." I poured in the glass. "How's the job?" I asked. "It's been quite busy actually." "Thanks for the drink. What's been going on?" "I'm not sure, a lot of military movements in the area." "Oh yeah," I said nervously. "It's a need-to-know basis, and you know what I mean." I noted it, and it's strange. I think they may be planning some more war games over in Salisbury Plain, as I do arrange the encampment of a lot of US troops, and that's not normal a little. Not this money, though. "How are you? Not too bad. I saw the photo. How the hell did you end up covering my dad?" I tried to take a shortcut, but it didn't work out. He laughed, and I noticed his hair was nearly cut short. "I like the haircut," I said. "Oh, thank you. What time is it today?" He laughed, and I reciprocated. I smiled, feeling my phone in my pocket vibrate. "Well, best be getting back to the party and listen to my wife talked about her freaking flowers." He raised his eyebrows and laughed. I pulled out my phone to see 3 missed messages and a voicemail. In the time that I spent with my wife's parents, I had completely forgotten about Josh. I found it was the first message, accompanied by a photo of a body and a sign, 10 a.m. And then another was a photo of an 8mm sign, the last with the 3 flowers and the 5M sign in the grass, lit by his phone. I could see the outline that was highlighted by the liquid that it's from the body. I called my voicemail and I listened. With more moments later, a photo arrived. I couldn't make it out, and just a yellow blurry. I found him back, feeling my heart race and my chest, it rang and rang. "Aren't you going to join us?" And my wife asked, peeking her head around the kitchen door. "Just a minute." I replied, "Is that Josh? You're talking to? Give me a minute." I shot it, "But Josh, you can pick up." For the rest of the evening I was distracted checking Josh's position on Google Maps. It didn't move, but I saw his pain in the middle of the field. "What's wrong with you?" my wife asked as we got ready for bed. "What it was like? You were somewhere else tonight." "I'm sorry, I didn't have a good day." "That's Josh's, I know, and you cannot let him go, can you? You'd be better off without ever." As she said this, I was checking his position. It didn't move. On the map I saw the pins that on top of a building called a little park farm. I wanted to call him again, but I didn't know. "It's not that, it's work." "Oh," she said, "sing me a while to get off to sleep." And when I did, I had visions of yellow tendrils and dead bodies, corrupted version of the events of the day. When I did wake, I had to Google Maps, and all I saw was Josh's last known position. When I called him, it went straight to voicemail. "I want to work." that morning and saw the remnants of the crash, except the police tape was replaced by a wire fence. I didn't think much of it until I saw the sign pinned to the fence and black square with a white silent circle in the middle. It wasn't until I ducked under the metal bar is on the way to the housing estate that I played. I was about to call Josh again but didn't. I was in denial. I didn't want to know, and if I didn't I could pretend that he was fine. My wife's phoned me when I was at work to tell me that her dad had been put away for training exercises in Salisbury and you wouldn't be around for dinner. She asked if I could pick up her mother when I got back and I said, knowing that I would need to get back home and then take the car, I wanted to tell her to do it herself, but I stopped myself. When I walked home, a man, in army fatigues and a rifle stood next to the fence and where the car crash was. "What's going on?" I asked. "Move along, sir," he said, and I did it. A few military vehicles passed me on the way home and it wasn't unusual, but many more than I had come to expect. I didn't go inside when I returned home and I got straight in the car and drove. I went through the center of town and got stuck in traffic. I was sat there for 20 minutes until I realized that we were being turned away. When I got to the front I saw a man ice cream sound. I opened the window. When I asked what was going on military exercise he said, "Please turn around." "Is this anything to do with what's going on at Salisbury?" I asked. "Thank you to my father-in-law, please turn around." As I did, I saw the cordon around the marketplace and something caught my eye, something that might look like my daughter. In front of it, a wire fence. On it, a pin sign, a black square with a white solid circle in the middle. "What does that sign mean that?" I asked the man. He picked up his gun, pointed it to my mouth and said, "Please turn around." I told my wife that I couldn't pick her up. I sat in the dining room, checking Google Maps to see if Josh is positioned, update his. My wife asked what I wanted for dinner and I told her whatever she had planned was fine. I kept refreshing, pleading with it to update, not caring about anything else. An hour later the pin disappeared. I zoomed out, expecting to see it elsewhere, and I assumed that it had time to lasagna. "It's my mom's favorite," she said, and we ate inside. "That was good," I said as I finished. I checked my phone one last time and to my surprise, his pin was back, though no longer where it was before. I zoomed in on it, the Nevada desert in the southwestern United States, and as quickly as it appeared it disappeared and it didn't come back. Over the last how many days I've noticed the symbol appearing in more and more places in the military. Personnel are popping up all over the place. I told my wife about them, but she says her dad says there's nothing to worry about it. But I am one of those. My nest had appeared in our backyard. My wife asked me to get rid of it, but I don't want to go near it. You may be thinking that the movies make it look easy. Oh wow, you got to do is put a bowl of silver and its skull. That's not too hard, right? Wrong. Encrypted is at least 6 times smarter than any human is. I could kill humans. Instead I would complete twice as many jobs. There are more risks involve the people taken into account. You fail, that dozens of others die, and you succeed and you get your $60 per capita. My eyes started. This threat to documents. My experience is in the field. I don't know how long it'll carry it on, and it depends how long people listen. It's just going to kind of be a public journal. Anyways, I'm rambling. I'm Kyle and I things that go bump in the night. 1 at 6 p.m. I get into my midnight black at 2010 Ford F350, the cast iron spikes bumper guard glistening in the evening, song 101.5. I begin my patrol waiting for the call for my boss, Jerry, a 69 redhead who is more jacked than Mike Tyson on steroids about my Knights of Simons. He finally called me around 8:30. Boys relays the information that I'm on the hunt for a stagger on. It's basically a big buck that is 6 feet tall. Is that deer have the organic equivalent of cast iron, per fur and horn sharper than spell butcher knives. Also said it is not afraid of humans and will not hesitate to go with them to death and add carnivorous on top of that. And you have a stagger on it, and I personally like to call them sex. All in all, a fairly simple on to open this log. I went to the area of the sighting and I parties. I opened the back door of my truck, grabbed my AR-10, put in 308 all in all the sexual due to the fact that they were like bullets and my 500 Magnum revolvers, and I put one very expensive bullet that vibrated between my fingers in the cylinder, a silver bullet, that I put the revolver, my holster, and started the search for the glory side. According to Jerry, a young couple was walking on the side of the road when a huge white mask came charging, collided with a male. He was killed on impact. The female read and called the police bawling about the loss of her boyfriend, and they referred her to Jerry, who then contacted me. She then witnessed the stag spear her boyfriend's corpse and walk into the woods with it impaled on its horns, and I thought blood and I followed them into the woods. After about half an hour of trailing, it was starting to get dark. Switch on the lights at the end of my Ghana by the light from my tack light. I found these sickening sight. There would be no open casket funeral for this matter, and there wasn't much left of them. The staggered ripped his stomach open, leaving his entrails traveling everywhere. His chest was nothing but lungs and ribs. Think of hearts. As a delectable morning was not working. What time is it in the man's face I need to clean? Shot to the head with my revolver to kill it? The only thing I was going to do with the rifle would be pissed off, and plus, even if I had managed to penetrate his skin, and cryptids have advanced regeneration, in a matter of minutes it would be fully healed. However, bronze burns cryptids. It did not yet notice me, and I switched off my attack out of my pocket and unrolled somewhat. The silence of a trained assassin, which I am, but that's a story for another time, was when I thought of something. I'm a big guy, 65 in, about 200 pounds of pure muscle, but I couldn't possibly keep this thing under control until it was tired enough to shoot it, unless it was in severe pain beforehand. The stag's genitals were openly exposed. I took my chance and I brought my steel-toed area boots into. It's not as hard as I could. The staged in pain as its baby-making sack was hit with enough pressure to smash a cinder block, and I jumped on its back and I wrapped the wire around the neck and I pulled. I heard the sizzle of its skin burning in. It started to back. The only thing I could think was, shit. How did it recover so fast? I hung on for dear life, as I know if I was butt off those horns and they were going to stab me right through the lungs. And then I got another idea that was probably dumber than the first. I grabbed its horns and I jumped. It was getting more pissed off by the minute, and even more so that it had resistance on its horns. I got traction floppy like a fish out of water. You see him? When the stake is twisted, it loses all power to its muscles. I place my foot on its back, pulled out the revolver. It's a game and it's sad, and I pulled the trigger here. The shot rang out and the stag stopped rashing. I called Jerry, told him that the job was done. He said, take care of the bodies, both human and stag, that I waited on Stacy's tailgate until they got there. Once they did, I changed the words with Jerry, who accompanied them. The money was wired to my accountant. I put my equipment back in my truck and drove off, the only slightly more sore than when I started. I got home, locks my truck and went inside, and here I am type in a journal, my tale of the night. That's all the time I have for now. I'll be back soon. This is Kyle reading or signing off. Then again, and tonight I had an extremely difficult time. Well God, it was painful. Turn in my ass feels like I dropped the soap in prison and my arm is wrapped in the hospital than Thanos. I'm Kyle Renninger and I get to ship beat out of me by hairless dogs apparently 92. I got into my truck completely dreading tonight, so I dealt with the Native American creatures before I, however, had never dealt with this specific creature. Jerry called me around 5 o'clock. No, I said as I picked up the phone dial, your assignment is Aquila. It's been terrorizing. The car is driving on 522. What the hell is a killer? A few clicks later sounds like something straight from hell and he hung up the phone a second after that. And now I was on my way through the state of West Virginia to a little town in the middle of nowhere and known as a Berkeley Springs, I think. The smallest town you know when you drink it by a factor of 4. That's Berkeley Springs. And I went to a small gas station asking about it's anybody seeing a hairless coyote. Apparently a car rolled through about an hour before the tire popped, scratches down the side and I smashed the window my ass to see the car as it had been left there. The 2019 Dodge Challenger looked like it had been hit by a steamroller with claws. The windshield was smashed. There were 2-inch deep claw marks running down the side, shredding the metal in the black paint. The tire looked like it had been run through a sickle bar in the car's roof had been ripped off. Turn it into a convertible redneck style. Whatever this key load was, it was a bad mother trucker here and I wasn't sure I wanted to fight it. I asked the owner of the store where the car owner had had his encounter, if you can call it that. He told me that it was about a mile outside of town. I opened up the back of my truck and I started loading my guns. Can I put a magazine of bronze rounds into my R in one single bullet in? To my revolver, this round was different from what I normally used. If the beast is Native American, you have to use a special round. The bullets are silver, hollow points with holy ash in the table and blessed by a Native American shaman. I got in the truck and I started driving down. 5:22 after, for 5 minutes I heard a girl that rattled the frame of my truck and it's all golden eyes in the woods alongside the road. Next thing I knew my truck was rattling with each revolution in my tire. I stopped the truck and I got out and I went to my passenger side tire and saw a hairless coyote when it's on me. This thing was 5 feet tall with wrinkled pink skin and midnight black. Another help, however, it was back up and half a second to running on me again. I'm not proud of it, but I panicked in the moment I started to run away when this thing jumped on me and bit me in the ass. I flipped over and I trapped up beneath me but it scratched the hell out of my back trying to get out and I got up and I ran to put distance between us. It was back up in a second chance. I screamed in scent which only made it bite harder. I took my Bowie knife, the size of a small crusader sword, out and I stabbed it in its side, yelped again and let go, but it's regenerated around my knife so I wouldn't be able to get it back out before I knew what was happening. The killer had to jump on me and I held it back as best I could because it was trying to snap my throat. I know if I got to my throat I was. Eventually I kicked it off and I ran to Stacy and I started her up and drove her full speed into the key lights in Paladins on the cast iron spikes water to my bumper guard. It's just screamed and sprayed blood across the front of my truck in the ground. I pulled out my revolver doing my best to minimize you. So my left arm and I got back in my truck, slumped into the driver's seat and called Jerry, telling him that the key that was dead. Well, I was waiting for the cleanup crew. I did my best to staunch the bleeding into my arm, to no results, an artery I ripped off my shirts, leaving tightly around the bite that would have to do until I got to the hospital. Jerry Gothard with the Crayola and took the body and wireless $750 to my account. Damn well deserved to after this shit. That thing put me through. And then I drove to the hospital. I told the doctor in the hospital that I got attacked by a rabid dog, which is an entirely untrue. I went home and here I am again. I'm going to take some time off. Till then I won't heal, I'll be. Don't play with keyless kids. This is Kyle reading or signing off 93. Jerry called me by assignment for the night and they had a job is. Now. I know how to do with job and his buds. I had never had to do something. By moving their wings. The song can put a human to sleep or, if they're already asleep, and can keep them from waking, from what I can tell they're fairly peaceful. The way to get rid of them is to make their presence seem unwanted, and I just didn't quite know how to do this. Is a waterman's people into the water with their beauty and then they drown them, and I had dealt with them first. The house was about half an hour outside of Brooklyn Springs. That place, like a track script, hits on the way there. I realized that I haven't really told you guys much about me, so let me introduce myself. My name is Kyle Rittinger. I'm a 65, 200 pounds lump of your muscle. I have jet black hair, a standard army crew cuts and an uncountable lumberjack beard. Lights of plain black, tight t-shirt, my steel toe area, a camel baseball cap. I grew up in rural West Virginia between Berkeley Springs and Martinsburg. My dad was a raging alcoholic who took his anger out on me. My mother was submissive and didn't stand up to my father. My little sister back is the nicest person you'll ever meet. I killed my dad when I was 17. I came home from work one night to hear her screaming. My mom was at work as well. I ran up the stairs and burst into a room to see my dad on top of her. I kept a gun, since I worked at a gun shop and I used it in defense. I grabbed him to the floor and didn't hesitate to shoot him in the deck. As he lay on the floor screaming, I got back out and I grabbed him again and slammed him again. I ran down the stairs and outside to see him trying to get up and I shot him again and again until my God was out of ammo. He was dead by the third shot and I buried him in the backyard. My mother came home and I told her what had happened. No one ever suspected this disappearance related to his death. They all thought that he ran off with another woman. After that I graduated high school and I used my psychology degree in an unusual way. I started a business as a contract killer. Something snapped at me the day I killed my father, some piece of my sanity was just gone. Not only was it now willing to kill, but wow, I looked forward to it and I enjoyed it. But don't mistake me as a serial killer. I don't know. I do it for cash. You may be wondering why I'm willing to confess to these crimes that I would be executed for. Well, for one, I'm no longer afraid of death and I no longer really feel fear. I feel pain and defeat, yes, but not fear. And number two, the entire world thinks that I'm dead, shot and a hit gone wrong. Well, I was shot, but I recovered just fine. The bottom they found that had my photo, less ID, was Mr. George Mason, my accomplice, who, when I was shot, I shot in the back of the head and pitched his body over the side of the building before fleeing the scene. That's when Jerry found me. I was hiding out to my late grandmother's house when I heard a knock at the door. I was just getting hot with a girl I brought home from the local bar, so obviously that's not going to work. 1 a.m. I didn't bother putting my pants back on before I talked to the door, leaving a very noticeable bulge in my boxers. I opened the door to see that 69 redhead with a lumberjack beard and biceps bigger than a bottle of Jack in my hand. Who the hell are you? And I asked, name is Jerry. I understand that I knew he was going to try and get money from me or threaten to tell, So I smashed the bottle of Jack drywall, and I hope that's not the tactic you use when I hire you. I didn't like that. He didn't say if. In the statements it was like he was implying that I was going to go work for him, or else what do you mean hire me? I mean that from now on, is it going to be hot in monsters? He reflected business card on my face and walked towards the door. The card said, Crept Axe, Monster Extermination Services, Jerry White's, and then his phone number. Hold the phone, Jim, and Jerry, or jerk off, or whatever the hell your name is. What if I don't want to hunt monsters since they don't exist? Oh, you want proof of their existence here. He disappeared for a moment and came back with a freaking 6 feet tall wolf. He leapt on me and started to drag me out the door by my shirt after my screaming. Jerry then said, Rag by her. That's enough. What the hell is that thing? That would be a firm wall of it. And just to your question, if you don't want to, then you die. Simple as that. How much? The $60 minimum, it goes up depending on the kryptonite. Fine, I'll attend the training. Great to see you there after this, me and my day, to finish what we were doing 3 times over, and I sent her home the next morning, and now here I am after a week of training. I'm not too much. I arrived at the property with the name problem, 100 acres based on what Stacy's GPS said. I turned out the song that I was listening to, Indestructible by Disturbed, and I got out of the truck. The owner of the property walked up to me, hands over there. He said in a girl voice, he was middle-aged, a balding and out of your belly. He was fairly short with an no-nonsense face. What time does Silver spur to my truck? After thanking the man and watching and walk back inside, I walked over to the pond and I looked in. I couldn't see anything at first, but then I noticed the face. It was the same as a human's butt. It was green. I hung up the spear and I spoke in a commanding voice, Come out of the pond now or I swear I'll stab you in the head. She looked up at me and didn't move, as if calling my off I wasn't bluffing. A second later she was willing in an ear splitting in town and right it under the water. A few more seconds and she was floating dead. She literally just looked like a human with the fishtail, and I called Jerry and I left the property next out of the call about the job answer. I arrived at the spots on 522 near to where I killed at 10 p.m. I immediately saw the red glow. When I heard their melodic song to make them feel unwanted, I grabbed my revolver and shot it in their general direction. They flew off and I got back into Stacy and I started to head home when I saw something that definitely wasn't human running in front of my truck. I pulled out my revolver with one of my nat rounds and I got out of the truck. I began to search. After a while I love walking down the road. I found a little old lady hunched over in the middle of the highway. I knew exactly what this was when I saw the wood skin on her back skinwalker shed. She turned around and as soon as I met her eyes I passed out. I woke up a few seconds later with her on top of me, now a wolf-like creature. I moved extremely quickly and put all my weight behind my foot, which connected with its abdomen, and sent it flying. And I ran up to it and I kicked it in the face, only had caught my shoe and it dragged me off my feet. It turned back to human and this thing kicked me in the face. She then punched me in the dick. What the hell, I said in a voice far too deep for a little play radio, screw off. She kicked me in the mouth and I started to stand up. She grabbed the knife of my belts and cut me across the abdomen, knocks me down and held the knife against my throat. I was dead, I knew it, she knew it, but for some reason I survived. She got up and put in my knife back in my belt, punched me in the throat to keep me down and ran off into the woods yelling next time, and I went home to lick my wounds. So my call was a little different tonight. At first of all, Jerry said that I know I had a partner. His name is Javier. He'll be there in 10 minutes. You know I work alone. I don't do partners. What's my assignment? You have two again tonight. First, there is a herd of Wendigo hunting tourists around the Winchester, Virginia area. Second, well, this is an unusual one, Jerry, chocolate. Jerry, you do realize I work encrypted interventions and not killing sex workers, right? Hey, whatever it takes to make money right now, I guess a 2019 Dodge Ram 3500 Turbo. This guy clearly had no idea what he needed to hunt. Group did. The truck was fully stocked, no reinforced windows, no cast iron bumper, no iron laced tires, nothing. That truck was like a soda can, take it. A man in his early 20s stepped out of the truck. He was about 6 wood, even though probably 170 pounds, with a mullet, a thick mustache and a Glock 17 on his head. If he was wearing a pair of black jeans and a white t-shirt and a pair of Carolina boots. He had a pair of Oakley sunglasses covering his eyes. You must be Kyle, he said while approaching me. Yeah, and you must be Javier. I replied, the one and only this, your truck. I asked her. Oh, yeah, I love her, but we're going to take my truck if you don't want to smash like a beer can. You might want to get a kid at a similar to mine, and I pointed to Stacy Dent in the side. A broken headlights and dried blood in the bumper spikes from the killers made her look much more able for the job than the pretty boy's track. Fine, let's take the piece of shit at this. I got up and I punched him in the garage, and at the sound hammer talk back for dramatic effect, he raised his hands. Don't make fun of another man's truck out here. He gave me a shitting in, granted, laughed, and so did I, helped him up and we got him to stay here and we started her. So obvious. What do you want to see first? The rapid sex robot or a herd of one to go? He looks taken aback. Robot, please. No, I'm not too fond of Wendigo robot, it is. After driving for a few minutes I worked up the courage to ask Javier about his past. So what's your story? Well, I used to be a cartel leader for El Chapo, and then my partner portrayed me. She reported me to the police and she took her kids. She killed our son and told her daughter and her family. I posed as Oblivion Ambassador and got her into bed without her recognizing me, and I threw out of the window when I jumped out after her, put her in my cartel car. Then I drove away and I took care of her a few minutes later in the middle of the desert, and I left you to rot. Did you ever find your daughter? Yeah, she was bought by a few FBI agents who had as many trafficking victims as possible, and they freed her. Connect to my custody until they found out about my past. They took her away and they imprisoned me, and I broke up by strangling the guard on duty with my handcuffs, and I shot and killed everybody on the compound, including my twin brother, who had been in prison for cartel affiliation. I placed my ideas pocket and I ran the holy shit, you're a badass man. How did they not realize that the body wasn't yours? The cartel requires members to burn off their finger and toe prints so they can't be identified as imprisoned. So your ex-partner? She was your girlfriend? No, amigo, she was my wife. I will never understand why she killed her son. I don't think I want to look into somebody that insane. Holy crap, man. I'm sorry. No, it's fine, it doesn't bother me as much anymore. Enough about me. What's your backstory? Compadre lied to him the story of my past, which I told. All that my previous post, along with some details that I left out, I wish I would like to continue to leave out for now, as they involve my child, and I may tell you someday. Wow, just like us. It wasn't hard to find the robot. It didn't go far from her previous residence. I pulled out an revolver lead bullets this time and held it at the ready. "Put your hands up, man." She turned around. "Why, I accidentally killed my owner. Everybody thinks I did. What reason do I have to live?" "Shoot me, sir, please. We are going to shoot you, man. Please put your hands up." How this thing was sentient with feeling of regrets. I had no clue, but I was willing to bring her in or kill her, either one fine. She slowly rested her hands and I handcuffed her. "Valerie, of course you're under arrest for the murder of Jonathan Rogers. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you. In a court of law, you have the right to an attorney. If you cannot afford an attorney, one will be provided for you by the state of Maryland. Do you have any questions?" "No good, I just arrested a sex robot." I called the police and left her chained to the front porch, and we laughed too, criminals have. We began driving to Winchester and shortly enough we arrived at the location in Meadow Park. Ranger, who took us to the location of the disappearance, and I knew exactly where the Wendigo lair was from the stench of rot coming from the cave about 100 yards away from on the disappearance site. I told the park ranger away where it was. We got to the back of it. There were 4 Wendigo feasting on 7 bodies, all clearly campers, and I had a full cylinder of knot around 6 shots. A Javier had his magazine full of knot rounds. His finger fondled the trigger of his Glock. The gun was clearly comfortable in his hands, and I try not to think about how many people died at the hands of this man. I was no clean, 100 more people than I, and it scared me. When we opened fire on the window, go hard. My first bullet called the Alpha in the head, killing him instantly. Javier's cards, one in the genitals and pain. My second bullet cost another one in the chest and blowing a hole the size of a potato. Throw it. Javier had a statistic in his face while shooting to wound. He was clearly enjoying. "Yes, sir." I called Jerry and he sent the cleanup crew, and I had 500 wired to my account and Javier had 450 to his. We went home. Javier got into his truck and drove home after a quick goodbye. Okay, so a lot of shit has happened since the last update. First off, I should clarify that I'm not Kyle, I'm Javier Garcia, and right now, disappearance. When I got here I found a story nearly finished on his laptop and I had a 10. I called the cops because Kyle was going to be found in his house. There was blood on the floor, a trailing to the woods. His truck was still parked in his driveway. The cops arrived and I told him he was missing it, and they didn't believe me. At first they didn't believe that my partner was missing. Well, that can't be possible. Kyle Ridinger is dead from bullshit is. I told them the story. Kyle told all of you in his third post, and they actually believed me by some miracle, and started an investigation. I used the identity of my other twin identical triplets. One was the only one who stayed out of the cartel. They questioned me about the last time that I had seen him, and it was the night before after our hunt. What do you mean hunt? You wouldn't believe me if I told you. Tell me some. This is important. If we are to find Kyle, we need to know who he could have pissed off, because right now it looks like a kidnapping. We were on a hunt for a Sasquatch and a friend of Sun. I need you to tell the truth here. Those are just old legends, I told you. You wouldn't believe me. Let me call my boss and put him on speaker. Okay, I took on my cell phone and I tapped Jerry's number in my contacts. Good old Jerry, the jerk-off, answered on the first ring. "Jay, what is it? Where the hell is Kyle been?" I've been trying to call him for the past 2 hours. The detective answer for me, please. PlayStation Lion. Detective Ventura of the Winchester Police Department. Kyle Rittinger was missing sometime last night and we are currently trying to find him. I understand that you are a Jay's boss. There is silence for a second before yes, good tells me he ain't got enough Sasquatch in a while last night, is that right? Yes, Jerry, sell through obviously greater teeth, and after a few seconds I hung up the phone. They questioned me for another half an hour, then they let me go. I went home with Kyle's laptop and I'm not going to transcribe what he wrote. Tonight we had 2 very difficult times since we last spoke. A wolf has bit the shit out of me. I got the usual call from Jerry around 6. Hello, Kyle, there's a Sasquatch terrorizing the Appalachian Trail. God damn it. There is also a friend wolf in the Martinsburg area. Okay, I'll get on it. When Javier arrived at 10 minutes late location, I got my guns out of my truck and a 6-foot piece of bronze American wire. For those of you that don't know, our fern wolf is a wolf the size of a mastiff. What's a job that can swallow a human all? It has claws as sharp as knives and nearly as large as the strength of Hercules on steroids. My bullets and my revolver with silver ones then play hard to track down the wall. There is a trail of blood that led right to her. When we found her, I told Javier the plan: you get in front of her and shoot her in the legs, I'll come back from behind and wrap this around her. And I held off the wire, got it? Javier said. He ran to the front of the wolf and got her attention. He started shooting at her, hitting every shot in her legs. I ran screaming in pain. She was immobilized and in a lot of pain, and I picked her up and I threw her in the bed of my truck. And Jerry likes to rehabilitate fern wolves and keep them in his pants, and I called Jerry and he started over to my location, arrived at 10 minutes later, and his 2024 at 3.5 firm walls are worth a ton of money, and then he drove off. He then went to the location of the Sasquatch. On the way there we talked about women inside. He got to the location of the Sasquatch sighting and got out of the truck. The Sasquatch found us. Before we found him, he stepped out into the trailer. My name is Miguel. Please, if you're going to do it, shoot me. I can hear his voice quiver. And get on your knees, please. He did. I walked up and I changed his hands together and he was crying, Miguel, it's okay, I'm not going to shoot you, thank you. He said, crying. I only change your hands because I don't think you sounds like a plan. I watch back to Miguel and unchained, Emma, come on, man, and stand up. You're free to go. Really, thank you so much. Every other hunter is tried to kill me, and he started crying again. It's okay, Mikola, and I need you to leave the area, though, otherwise they're going to send another hunter after you. I'll give you an hour's head start before I call my boss and say that you ran off and they never go more than 5 miles from the estate points. Can you run 5 me in an hour? He smiled. Yep, we'll get a move on, pal. Maybe we'll meet again someday. And he still up and wrapped me in a bear hug. I can't breathe, Miguel. Oh sorry, sir, it's okay. And I turned around and Javier was smiling, it generally smiling. I've never seen it before. Do I get a hug like that? You big ugly teddy bear, shut up before I dress you up in an animal costume and turn you over to Jerry. When we left, way to the hour until Jerry. That's why I got away after he accepted it and we went home. Interior. I am right in the house. I just heard something walking outside the door to my room. It sounds big and it has claws. I'm going to check it out. If I don't come back and you find this Javier, post this story and continue this post thread. So that's it. I loved it is. Details coming on Kyle's case. The police found Javier Garcia. You're under arrest for the kidnapping of Kyle Ridinger Mello Wall. It's been a while, I know, and damn do I have a story for you. First off, I should tell you that I am indeed alive, yet, despite my best efforts to the contrary. Let's start feeling first. I should start with what happened on the night of my disappearance. I understand Javier posted my last entry even though it was unfinished anyway. After I heard the heavy thumping, scratchy footsteps working the way back my hallway, I got up to check it out, taking my large hunting knife with me. Now I guarantee you I looked absolutely stupid, emerging dramatically from my room in a union suit, with my hair messy in my beard and dire heat up some oil, holding a knife the size of my head. So I walked out of my room and immediately saw the source of the noise. There is a set of yellow glowing eyes at the end of my hallway. I quickly reached out to my right and I flicked the lights white. And now, at this point, the song playing through my Bluetooth speaker in my room switched to Country Squire by Tyler Childers, perfect fighting music. You might want to listen to it before you read the next part so you understand how amazing this shit was. The Skinwalker spoke, "Kyle, I have come. It is time for your demise. Come willingly and I will make it quick. If you refuse to listen to my dad, I will have to rip a few limbs off." Then I reply pretending to stroke my beard. Thoughtfully, I'm going to go with option C. Screw you and your demands. And this obviously pissed her off and she started while saying, acting, all macho, reply period. Can I take her in the face? I need a sprawling. I wasn't need to let out some anger, so I better get back up so I can find her some more. She got to her if she turned and growled at me again and ran at me. I thought you was going to lunge at me again, but I was mistaken and she plowed through my legs. I landed flat on my back and I had the air force for my lungs. She padded over and stood looking down on me without hesitation. I wasn't going to get it back without killing her and I charged her and tackled her. Once I was on top of her, I started punching blood, ran down her face and pulled out of the floor, holding her black first. After a few seconds, connect with my chest and send me flying across the hallway and I hit the wall on the other end, crack in the drywall and I fell to the floor and I lay there stunned for a few seconds. She walks back up to me and raked her claws on my face for my hairline, over my left eye and down to my jawbone, leave him for a large gases and make him my left eye useless. She then bit me in the foot and started to drag me away. I couldn't even scream and I blacked out somewhere along the way and woke up sometime later to the Skinwalker standing over me here and glaring down. I could only see out of my right eye. My face was sticky with what I assumed was dried blood. There is a Syrian pain in my right father which I took as I wouldn't be walking out of here. The Skinwalker was now back in perform. She was treated by facial woman, said I assumed she was trying to treat infection. I tried to pull away but only fell over on the dirty shack for I tried to crawl away, if you believe. She grabbed me by the remaining scraps of my union suit and dragged me back into the chair. I didn't try to get away anymore after that. After that, many days passed at least 6 or 7 o'clock, I'm not. There is a commotion. One night there is a loud roar like that of a freaking dinosaur, kind of felt like I was in Jurassic Park for a second. And then a black sheep. It crashed through the ceiling of my shack. It was the Skinwalker. She was trapped under him now and I began calling for help. And after a second or two more and I heard Javier's voice. Hey, I found him over here. How are you? Suddenly I saw him in the doorway, freaking jackass. Kyle, I had to break out of a maximum security prison to save your ass. He said to me about chocolate and I tried to get up and I hit the ground hard. Suddenly I saw two other faces in the doorway. One was my red-haired boss, Jerry. The other one was Miguel, Jerry, and Javier, helped me up at 8:40 on one side and helped me to Javier's truck. Once there Jerry spoke, Kyle, you've been put on leave from this point until this time next month. I'll clean this up, Javier, get him home please. No, hang on a freaking second. I am doing nothing. I said after Javier and Jerry and found the skinwalker still trapped. I am the shotgun at her head and spoke, what do you say in defense? I asked, screwed you just because you kill me when you know that, right, my death means nothing. We will win. We will win the war. You'll be betrayed by one of your own. You will die. We will always win, Kyle, and I'm not convinced. I replied and I pulled the trigger, blowing her head off. I went to thank Miguel. After I did, I went to go back to the truck, but I heard a commotion behind me and I turned and saw Jerry holding his pistol to Miguel's head. Miguel wasn't able to escape Jerry's iron grip. Jerry, what the hell are you doing? Let him go. He saved me. I screamed at him while you were gone. Kyle, I understand, I'm following protocol, stay out of it. He pushed my other way and Miguel turned to look at me with the tree, looking at his face, and then the shot right now on me. You follow the ground and later on, moving. I tried to run to him but ended up stumbling there and I sat by his side crying, and I heard the sound of Javier punching Jerry, but I didn't care. My boss had just shot the creature that had saved my life. Miguel didn't deserve to die. It was that moment that I decided I would no longer be loyal to Cryptic. Javier ended up beating the shit out of Jerry, yet Jerry just said that he deserved it and Javier took me home. I got home and I passed out of my bed, not even bothering to take off my bloody dirty clothes. This was a month ago and I am scheduled to take my first return call tonight and we'll see what happens. It's been quite a while since my last. I do apologize for that. My life has actually been going fairly well until about an hour ago. Anyway, since we last spoke, I've got a girlfriend. You didn't think I could do it? Did you begin taking an online spelling and grammar classes? He has. I saw your comments. I adopted a Rottweiler and gotten a day job, along with submitting my 2-week notice to Jerry. Well, here we go. This will be my last, were you ever? I'm done with everything. And I met Rachel back in October. She worked with me at Sheets, my day job, and we hit it off well and soon. We were exchanging phone numbers soon after we began dating, and now she's gone for good and she's never coming back. She can't come back. I guess I should start from the beginning for this to make sense. Today, Rachel and I invited Javier over for dinner. He showed up at around 5 o'clock and Rachel and I began preparing dinner around 6 o'clock and I grilled some chicken and she saw vegetables. We sat down to eat around 7 o'clock and finished at around 7:30, cracked open a couple beers and a bottle of wine, only messed around and just hung out until around 9 o'clock. Javier was pulling out. His coach went there. What's a massive thumb at the door, rattling it on his engine is Rachel screamed, dropping her wine glass, shattering that the Javier and I draw guns and train them on the door. Rachel go to my room and lock the door. And I said it has. Another massive thumb came on the door and it was beginning to crack go. She ran back to my room, heard the door latch, lock, another song and massive crunch. As the door broke off, the hinges of his massive 7 feet tall Jerry walked in a sawed-off shotgun on a level. That is Javier. What the hell are you doing? Is all Javier was able to say before the gun went off. Javier fell to his knees, clutching his stomach. Jerry leveled the gun to his head and looked at me, my gun still raised. Put the gun down, Kyle, you sick asshole, I'll kill you. And I pulled the hammer back on my revolver. Jerry raised an eyebrow and kind of shotgun for the second shot. Put it down or I'll blow his head off. Defeated, I dropped my gun and I dropped to my knees. Kyle, you have two options, die or continue your position in my company. Screw you. I guess you've chosen. And then I heard a scream, loud and animalistic. I turned him, so Rachel running at Jerry with my Bowie knife raised. He turned, raised his gun and fired. Rachel fell to the ground. I gave it all in her chest. The shot killed her instantly before he could turn around. I picked up my gun and shot him in the back 3 times and then ran up and kicked him in the back of the head and shot him in the head. Jillian and I ran to Javier and, knowing Rachel was already gone, and I checked his balls, he was still alive but fading fast. I tried to put pressure on the wound but it didn't help. He stared at me with glossed over eyes as a trailer. Blood ran from the corner of his mouth and the pool of blood he was laying in and grew inside. I said next to him, defeated at knowing that he was gone. I'm sorry, my friend. My voice was sober. Now, as I sit in my living room with my best friend, my girlfriend, and my ex-boss all dead around me and, my God, I lie in the table next to me reloaded with one more shot. The shots will take my life. I write this as soon as I post this. I will end it. I just thought I would like some closure. Thank you everybody for the support. This is Kyle Rittinger signing off for the last time. No, 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 this isn't happening. This isn't real. Jesus Christ, I really wish that I were kidding you right now, but I'm not. Dispatch wants me to go to this lady's house and investigate. Of course they don't believe me that a toilet paper son. I'm sure that they believe she's insane, but I know better. The first time I had heard it was Taco Tuesday. Dad Billy says that there's a monster in his toilet. At home, Clara sounded very concerned. Clara, Billy is only trying to scare you. I assure you there is no monster in the toilet, or in anybody else's toilets for that matter, and I chuckled to myself. 4-year-olds are very creative when it comes to story, no data, she said as bits of taco fell from her mouth. I don't think he wanted to scare me. He seemed really scared and I'm sure someone else must have told him a story about a snake in the toilet or something, or maybe they played a prank on him, but there aren't snakes or monsters in any toilets. Someone's just trying to scare you kids. No one said anything about snakes. What's a prank? I smacked my hand in my head. I really didn't feel like answering that. It had been a long day and all I really wanted was for my sweet angel daughter to Kylie, shut the hell up and go to bed instead, and I found myself trying to explain to a 4-year-old what a prank was. Remember when you drew that spider on the window to try and scare me? Yeah, she giggles. That was funny. That's a prank, a trick that you play on someone, and while they might be funny to you, it's not always funny to the person that you do it to. But you thought it was funny. I let out a sigh. I had no interest in explaining to my daughter why I thought her 13-legged spider in the window was funny, even though I'm slightly terrified of spiders. It's getting late. Let's clean up dinner and get ready for bed. When we'll be here in the morning when I go to work with my daughter, if I need to talk to you in the bed, I slouched into the recliner and I turned on the television. I close my eyes, but I could still hear the drone of voices from the television, although I couldn't make out what they were saying. I felt as if I was thinking and deeper into the chair when suddenly I was startled away. "Dad, Dad, 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 come quick one now," I thought. I grumbled as I thought my way out of the recliner. "Dad, are you coming in here?" "Hello," the voice was coming from the bathroom and I assumed she needed toilet paper. What I said sternly, "Dad, the toilet, I can feel it. I can feel it on my butt." I was wrong, yeah, and I didn't try to hide the annoyance in my voice. "Not just the seat, Dad, the air. I can feel it blowing on my butt." Just like Billy said, she sounded freaked out. "Let me get this straight. You can feel the toilet to breathing on your butt?" I raised an eyebrow. "No, not the toilet, the monster in the toilet. I can feel the monster in there breathing. Look, I can see all right. Hop off there and let's take a look together." I didn't want to encourage your behavior, but she seemed to genuinely freak out, so I thought that I would put her mind at ease. We both peed over the toilet bowl. Declare a surprise, it was completely empty. Nothing but a shiny white. "See, it doesn't look like it's breathing on you." "No, it looks hungry to me." Hungry and hot chocolate confused. "I think the only thing that's hungry for are those tacos that we have for dinner. I'll make sure to feed it before breakfast." I left you, grossed at gold. We washed her hands and I carried her to her bedroom and I talked to her back in the bed. I wish that this was the end of the story, a silly girl, a tie, your dad, and an empty toilet. But that wouldn't be a story worth telling her. I don't dare waste the last minutes of my life telling you such a boring story. About 2 weeks after the hungry toilet incident, Clara came home from school crying, "Dad, it's Billy, he's not coming to school anymore, he's gone, he's gone." Clara buried Ad into my chest. I knew what she was referring to, her good friend Billy had passed away. I wasn't sure how you had said there is still an ongoing investigation. The body had been found. Well, not the entire body, at least there is a part of a leg and arm left. Dangling from the toilet, the ends looked as if someone had stuck them and a wood chipper. There was blood everywhere, on the walls, the floor of the ceiling. The toilet bowl was overflowing. Shards of bone and blood, hair, shreds of skin and cloth. I was there in that Sunday. There was a madman on the loose. Someone had to be mad to have done something like this to a 4-year-old, and the way they left the body yet as if they were playing some kind of practical joke, disgusting. Of course I didn't tell her what I know about Billy. She was only 4. I always knew the day would come when my sweet girl would have to learn about death, but I never imagined it would happen so soon and not like this. I did what I could to console her, telling her that Billy was in a better place. We went and picked up some flowers for the funeral and placed them in a toy dump truck. Clara said that Billy was always fascinated with trucks. The service was lovely and most of the students from the school attended. The PTA set up a fund and raised money for Billy's family to cover cost of the funeral and burial and to help pay bills while Billy's parents were out of work grieving. A lot of people from the community donated. I was always surprised at how the community came together during hard times like this. For several days after the funeral, Clara wouldn't stop talking about the Billy and the toilet. She was convinced that a monster in the toilet had eaten them. He said that he can feel its breath and it felt like warm air coming out of the toilets. "Clara, I'm sure the only one that he felt was just Billy passing gas." "No," he said, "he could be the breathing," he said when he looked down at the bowling, like that demonstrated by moving her stomach in. "And Clara, that's enough. I'm sure he just felt water splash up, like when you have a big poop, and it splashes into the toilet bowl. But that's enough. Let's not talk about monsters in the toilet anymore. It's upsetting. Monsters aren't real. I lied, toilet monsters aren't real, but human monsters were very real, and unfortunately we still haven't found the one who had murdered Billy. I just wanted to stop all the talk about monsters. I know that she was grieving it and that grief looked different for everyone, but this had gone on for a long enough. She was starting to upset of the kids in the school with her talk of a toilet monsters. I just wanted to come to an end, and I wanted to find the man that did this so that my little girl would be safe. I found no such man, but I did find something mad. With Billy's case still open and no leads, I ended up working nights at the station, and I was just lucky enough that I was usually out patrolling an area close to home right around Claire's bedtime. My mother stayed over at the house with Clara while I worked, and every night I happened to be patrolling close by, I would sneak by the house to tuck my sweet angel into bed. "Is she asleep yet?" And I asked my mother. No, her voice was worse. "She's not in. I'm out of 6. Stop at the store and get your mom a pack, would you?" "Mom, you know I refuse to enable you for Christmas. If you want them, you'll have to get them for yourself, but I won't." Before I could finish, my mother snatched up repairs. "I'll just go and get them now while you tell Claire in the bed. I'll be back." "Come on, Mom, I don't have time. I'm on the clock." "Where is Clara anyway?" "She's in the bathroom. She had to go too many tacos. I'll be right back." She yelled at her voicemail, Playland behind her. I rolled my eyes. That woman and her damn cigarettes. I went to the utility closet to get an air freshener. I hated the smell of cigarettes. "Dad," I dropped the air fresheners. Clara streaked from the bathroom. I had never heard a scream that way. I bolted for the bathroom and I threw up in the door. To my horror, Clara and I were both wrong. The monster in the toilet. There is no monster in the toilet. The toilet was the monster. "Daddy, help." Clara screamed, trapped, as a giant tongue arose from the toilet and wrapped itself around her. I couldn't believe my eyes. How could something that size even come from something that small? And what was it made of? It appeared to be made of porcelain, yet it behaved as if a giant tentacle, wrapping tightly around Claire's body. I reached for her arm, but the tongue snatched her up to the ceiling. Damn, my wife, she has to be right. Even from beyond the grave I could hear her voice, bitter and critical, taunting me. "I always told you we didn't need a house with Halsey, and now look at the situation you're in." That. I grabbed at the tongue itself, but to my surprise it was hard, just like porcelain. How the hell was it moving this way? This was unreal. I reached for my nightstick and I slammed it against the tongue, but it did nothing. How is this possible? It moves as if it's living, looks as if it's porcelain, and it seems to be even harder. I contemplated my gun. I could shoot it, sure, but I could hit Clara. I didn't know what to do. So I can continue to hit the thing with my nightstick as hard as I could, over and over again, as I shot at it. Let her go, give me back my daughter. The ground beneath my feet began to vibrate as the porcelain beast to let out a roar. Its voice sounded mechanical in nature, like a combination between that of a bear and a machine. It wasn't like anything I had never heard before her. What the hell is this? This isn't real. It can't be here. Clear the screen does. I hit the tongue and the bowl of the toilet again, and I fell into the sink as the toilet bowl grew 10 times its size. Almost instantly, the force of the growing bowl knocked me back and I tried to pick myself up off the floor. When I slapped, I looked down and realized that I was lying in a puddle of my own blood. I reached for my head and it was throbbing. I must have knocked it on the sink. As the toilet bowl knocked me back, all I wanted to do was say my daughter, but I couldn't even pick myself up off the floor. My hands trembled as I reached for my gun. Clara screamed again and the toilet roared. The floor rumbled, shaking loose the ceramic tiles. The bowl looked as if it were breathing in announcement to radically him, as if it were in pain, and that's when I saw it. Layers upon layers of teeth, there must have been thousands of them. The first row spun faster and faster as another ring of teeth emerged, spinning in the opposite direction. I fumbled around for my gun and I pointed it as long as I could in hopes that I didn't hit Clara more and more. The toilet roared again, as the bullet ricocheted off the bowl and broke a vase on the opposite side of the room. I couldn't believe my eyes. What the hell was happening, and I let out a scream as the tongue of the bowl slipped almost instantly back into the bowl, directly through the rings of teeth below, and Clara falling right behind it. I scrambled around, crawling for the ball as fast as I could, but it was too late. My face was met with a splatter of blood and, God says, the thousands of tiny teeth tore my daughter to pieces. The walkie-talkie on my belt let out a beep as a voice came through. "We've got a 5150 voice." If I had received this call any other night, I probably would have been laughing too. But now I know. The next time you're on the toilet and you feel the rush of warm air on your bottom, please run. If you think you've only felt the flash from a very solid turd hitting the water, you are wrong. If you thought that it was a loose hair rubbing ever so slightly against your bottom, it isn't. It's the tongue of a porcelain beast, and that beast is hungry here. I've tried calling for help. I only wish that they were right. Without my Clara, there is nothing for me to live for anymore. So I'm writing this to you now as I lie in a puddle of my own blood waiting for the porcelain beast to take me to